everybody. Happy Friday and welcome to the Tip-Off, the show that sets the stage for all the most important news, daily fantasy plays, and bets on tonight's win or go home NBA game, 15 game MLB slate, and the PGA tournament. We're going to cover it all today. All of that and more. I am your host, Kayla Knierim. It's Friday. Somehow it feels like Monday. Ben, Spags, how are we doing today? Are we ready for the weekend?
I'm feeling pretty good. I got my dogs here by my side. Anybody who is hoping for a chance of a cameo, them being here right next to me, so they're not going to upset all the production equipment. It's part of that. But I also have my cat here, and she's sitting on my lap, so I'm petting her like I'm a Bond villain doing the show. And I feel like that honestly could only help the aesthetic. So I'm excited to be a part of the show and present my plans for world domination.
Fabulous.
It doesn't feel like Friday. Yesterday felt like Friday. When we were doing the show yesterday, I thought it was Friday. Now today has no feel. I'm excited. It's been a day. I bet tennis today, and then any day that I bet tennis in the morning, it throws off my whole schedule. But you know what? We're here. We got a lot of topics on left. I'm looking right now. So it's for a Friday, actually pretty jam-packed today.
It is. I have 1,001 things to do, but we're going to get through it. I had an eventful morning. I last minute got asked to house/cat sit for a friend that lives 10 minutes away. Left their house last night, set off the alarm. The police came. Go to feed the cat this morning and cannot find it anywhere.
You lost the cat?
100% thought the cat got out during all the commotion. It was an eventful morning, guys. Found the cat under the bed, wasn't making a peep. It was terrifying. They love this cat. I thought I lost it.
What a coincidence that Spags just happens to have a cat on his lap and you lost the cat. That would be quite a turn of events.
One of us just happens to have a better bedside manner for cats and dealing with them, I suppose. And Kayla, the animals know to run away. As you guys can tell watching the stream, Kayla, pure evil when you get behind those eyes.
This is why I don't own pets, because I lose things. So ask me to watch your cat.
You just lose a pet? I feel like that's not the best reflection at all.
Well, I also don't have one because I don't want to take care of one. So there's that. I love pets, though. Love cats and dogs. Maybe one day I'll have one, but that day is not today. Luckily, we found the cat. All is well. Now let's get to the show. Don't forget to the like button and subscribe to the channel for countless hours of content on the NBA, MLB, NHL, PGA, MMA, NASCAR, and every other sport that's in season. We want to talk to you about our sponsor, No House Advantage, who is taking a different spin on daily fantasy sports by offering player prop contests across the NBA, MLB, NFL, and PGA for cash prizes. This exclusively peer-to-peer fantasy sports platform levels the playing field and makes it easier for you to win real cash compared with your traditional DFS sites. With over 500 player props offerings, No House Advantage is the largest provider of player props in the industry. And the best part is that you will receive a $20 first match deposit bonus today with promo code Awesemo. Be your friends, not the house. Download in the App Store and win big with player props today. Heading right into our bad beats. Yesterday, the glorious Russell Westbrook continued his march to the playoffs with some late MLB lineup shenanigans while the PGA Championship rolls on, wind and all. How's it been for you guys? Spags, we'll start with you.
Yesterday, as it is always going to be the case in these showdown NBA DFS tournaments, sometimes you can sort of get the right strategy down. I did the Live Before Lock show with Greg Ehrenberg yesterday. We talked about the importance, actually talked on this show as well, talked on Live Before Lock about the importance of not playing Westbrook as captain, getting different there. And of course, the one guy who did end up being functional as captain, Daniel Gafford, was the one that I didn't have any exposure to. But I have to give credit to Greg for calling that out on the show. As I mentioned, some of the other guys that I was looking at, some of the other centers for Washington, I thought were in play. That's the one that went off. That's sort of the nature of the beast, but going to be the same thing again today. I feel like do or die basketball, always a positive in my life, and living vicariously through Ben's experience with the PGA Championship, also crucial to me as well.
Yeah, that's a whole. We're going to talk a little golf today. The wind is blowing at Kiawah Island, playing very, very difficult. Last night was good, though. Wizards got it done. They rolled. I was actually concerned about the hockey game. I was talking before the show. What a wild game, Panthers Lightning. The Lightning scored 5 goals in the second period. They still lost the game, which was fortunate to me because I bet the Panthers. But yeah, I mean, we get another one tonight. It's been interesting, these playing games. The home teams have won, and teams, it hasn't been utterly competitive. I'm hoping we get a good game tonight because there's been a lot of blowouts. I mean, the Hornets were crushed by the Pacers and the great Pacers were crushed by the Wizards. So we will see what Memphis and Golden State can do tonight.
That Maple Leafs game was so scary. Did you guys see that hit?
Yeah, Tavares. It's been, I mean, the hockey playoffs have been, I know it doesn't get a lot of buzz, but very entertaining games, even though it's been a weird season for a lot of reasons, of course.
Absolutely. All right. Fun new segment here, speaking my language. Julio Jones Bachelor. There's one big bit of NFL news this week with interesting ramifications for the season as well as the betting markets now. The Falcons are rumored to want to trade Julio Jones for salary cap and rebuilding reasons. A surprising bit of news at this point of the offseason. There are odds available at some books on his potential destinations. Which of these contending NFL teams are most likely to get that final rose from Julio and the Falcons if he is traded? We're going to go through these one by one. First up, we've got the Ravens, who are the favorite at plus 275. I'm a little nervous with what the Ravens have been doing. They've been getting some good guys. So, Ben, we'll start with you here.
So this is something, I'm not exactly in NFL mode. I didn't even know this was a thing until very recently. And obviously, if Julio Jones gets traded, that could really shake up some things. The Ravens are a team I think we've seen for a while now that Hollywood Brown, I think he's a fine weapon. And certainly Andrews is another weapon for Lamar, but they could use a dominant, what DeAndre Hopkins did for the Cardinals style. And if they could get him, maybe that's the missing piece, because the Ravens multiple years in a row, and it seems like going forward, are always going to be in the hunt in the AFC. So to see them as the favorite, it looks like naturally they're trying to push most of their chips into the middle while they have Lamar, in getting better each year.
Yeah, I think to me, this is one that I know did the podcast I do on Fridays. My pal Peter Rovers at Splash Player. We're doing fantasy football right now, also doing a recap of the show, Playmakers from ESPN, if anybody wants to go check that show out. But we did talk about this one, and Pete did the research for one of his side projects he does about who could actually get Julio Jones in the mix because of cap space and all of that. And the Ravens are one team where they'd have to do some really crazy stuff to figure out the cap space. You add in the fact, too, they just spent pretty high draft capital on Rashad Bateman. I don't get the odds for this one. I think it's people spinning a narrative more than it is sort of an actual destination possibility. And I think Ben's points sound like, yeah, you could sort of say like Julio's the missing piece for a team like this. But this is a team that we know maybe they are going to start to pass more. It does seem like some of their personnel moves are sort of blowing that direction that they are going to try to pass more. But passing more for them, it's all going to be relative. Like, I think it's not going to still be a high volume offense. I don't know what bringing Julio in the mix, like, it does make it easier for Lamar Jackson to get the ball to him, but it's going to decrease the productivity for the rest of the guys, going to decrease the options then for Rashad Bateman. So I just don't see this one being a viable option at all. I get that, the people want the Ravens to be making moves, and the Ravens are making some moves to shore themselves up, but I think this is one that's really overvalued and one that I don't even know how feasible it would even be based on the salary cap restrictions that the NFL is really onerous with.
They took my beloved Sammy Watkins, and I'm still not over it.
Sorry, yeah, it's another guy. A good point, Kayla. Another guy they added in free agency.
That's why they're scaring me.
There's only so much money and only so much, snap count and field time to go around. And when you have Watkins, when you have Bateman again too, another guy like, as well as Hollywood Brown and Mark Andrews, like, that's a lot of dudes there. And I don't know why you spend the draft capital as well as the contract salary on Julio Jones when you have invested that much. Next, we have 49ers plus 300 Spags. This is one that I think the sort of logic behind it makes a little bit more sense. Kyle Shanahan can have some familiarity with Julio from their Atlanta days. And also, I think, there is sort of an expectation from the Niners that they're pushing their chips in here, trying to give either Jimmy Garoppolo or Trey Lance all the weapons they can to succeed. But I think this is a bad move for the Niners, and one that, they have Brandon Ayuk there, who's kind of proven himself, or did, at least to me, relative to a bad year for the team last year, proved himself to be a pretty qualified outside receiver. You also still have Deebo Samuel, who's going to get his mix of little dump offs and run plays, and then maybe even more passes. I think is something that he has shown the ability to get more of. So another thing to me, where in terms of team building, I don't know why you bring in Julio Jones there. I think a little bit overvalued. And I think there are some teams a little further down the board, and to me, make more sense from the win now perspective, as well as just, spending money and having room to actually plug Julio in.
Yeah. The reality of the situation is, like, if you look at any team and it's just like you add Julio, well, that's probably a good thing, but it's also, there's an opportunity cost, and there's a lot of things that go into doing this. So when you look on the surfaces, of course, the Niners getting another weapon, that's great. But when I really think about it, yeah, they're another team. They're a run-first team. They've got some things. We'll see what's up, obviously, with their quarterback in terms of Trey Lance and whatnot. But I don't, when I heard this news, that was not one of the teams that I really pictured possibly vying for him. It would be great if they could get him, and I do respect John Lynch and that front office, but at the same time, they didn't strike me as a team that would really be a serious candidate. So looking at those odds, I was stunned to see them as one of the favorites as well, similar to Baltimore.
A team who made a lot of offseason moves for the better. The Patriots at plus 450. Ben, what do we think about him landing here?
You probably will go here, because that would be the worst case scenario for me, because I hate the Patriots. a team that, I mean, I don't even know. They need all the help they can get. They have absolutely no weapons on the outside. So it does make some sense. But again, I don't know if that's the type of team. I mean, Julio is a great player, but he's been a great player for a very long time. And I don't know if the Patriots are really close to anything. The Bills have finally just started their run in that division. I think we're going to see that. Certainly Miami has shown some signs. The Jets are the Jets, but I just don't know where New England is. So if they have to pay a premium price tag to get him in, I almost don't know if that makes sense to make your team pseudo competitive. What are they really vying for at this point?
I think it's a logical move for them if they had invested in that free agent money in Kendrick Bourne, Nelson Aguilar, and those could be contracts and maybe it's a little bit easier to get out. But there was some guaranteed money involved, so I'm not really sure. And it doesn't seem like a Patriots move to give up any form of draft capital at all. And I think that's something that Julio, maybe because the Falcons want to dump that money, they're sort of desperate to clear that cap space. I think maybe they'll take a decreased trade package in terms of just getting him off the books and making that work. But I think still there's going to be something that has to be given up, and the Patriots are sort of reluctant to do that. So I think the Patriots to me are logical. Like if Julio's available, I think you take him over Kendrick Bourne 10 times out of 10, no matter what you think about Julio Jones at this point in his career. But I do think it's an interesting fit to me. Stylistically, I think him with Aguilar, as well as having Jacoby Myers in the slot, I think that's an interesting little pairing there if it's Mac Jones, especially at QB. So I think Julio to me just kind of makes sense, but I just don't know the Patriots are going to be strong enough or willing enough to pull the trigger.
Will we see Mac Jones get some playtime this year? Do you think?
I mean, I think it's a decent possibility. Cam Newton's probably going to be starting, or at least getting the first crack at starting, but he was so bad last year that Mac Jones just kind of being an average guy coming in, even as a rookie, as long as he shows some grasp of the system there. And I think he should be able to. I think he's the better play to go with as a starter. And if you are going to start your young QB and build around him, having a guy like Julio there does make more sense.
I'm very against Julio going to anywhere in the AFC, let alone the AFC West. So that brings us to the Chargers at plus 600, Spags.
And this is another compelling fit, but to me, the timelines don't really seem to match up in the way you'd want, where you have the one aging receiver in Keenan Allen, you have Herbert, who's probably about as ready as he's going to be at this point. He was fantastic last year. But I just think bringing Julio in the mix, I think there are some prospects they can develop there. Mike Williams is still going to be a guy that should be meaningfully involved. And I don't know that they need Julio right now. I just feel like the development window with the new head coach coming in with Brandon Staley too, I just feel like there are some things here where I don't know the fits perfect. Fantasy-wise, that'd be a really interesting duo to have, where you have Keenan Allen and you have Julio getting meaningful targets from Justin Herbert. But to me, I just don't know that it's the right time for them to be getting a guy like Julio in.
Yeah, I mean, the Chargers are a team that, they're ahead of schedule, and it was because they stabbed their QB, and that turned out to honestly poor Tyrod, but it was a good thing because they got to see that Justin Herbert is fantastic. And now, all systems go with him. They've got the weapons. It's just weird. Keenan Allen is such a possession receiver, and Julio, obviously at this point in his career, he's certainly not like Mike Williams in terms of a burner and whatnot. So I don't know where you really go there. And they're obviously, we'll see what's up with their backfield and whatnot. So again, I'm kind of with Spags here. If you can get Julio for the right price, there's always, there's going to be a discussion of let's get him in here because it can only help your wide receiver and your quarterback. There's no doubt about that. But at the same time, you're going to have to give something up. And I think when you look at the Chargers, it's more about, can they make the defense sustainable? They're going to have to play the Chiefs twice every single year. The Broncos, no one cares about the Raiders. But other than that, I mean, it's a situation. I think there are other priorities for them at this point.
And just up the road from Hotlanta, we've got the Titans sitting at plus 600, Ben.
So this would be pretty, I mean, A.J. Brown and him would be a problem, and Derrick Henry. That would be an interesting situation. They're another team that, they're not a pass-first team. They want to run the ball, and they've got Derrick Henry. But I kind of like this. It's not someone I would have thought of again, but the more I think about it, it would be a pretty interesting dynamic to have that type of offense. You have two big-time receivers. You have Derrick Henry. You know your identity as a football team, and they've been competitive. I don't think they're that far off. If they're not willing to kind of push it in, then you have to ask how many teams would want a guy like Julio, because the Titans have been close. They've won some playoff games. Maybe he could be a good addition. So at plus 600, I don't think that's the craziest thing in the world. Even on the surface, it seemed a little more far-fetched until I dug into it.
You think Corey Davis being out of town, opening up really an exact amount of targets that could fill in for Julio and have them be more productive targets, I think makes a lot of sense to me. The Titans, I don't think have the cap room right now, which is part of why they lost some of the guys they have in the offseason with Corey Davis, with Jonnu Smith. But there is a lot of target share to go around because of Jonnu being gone, because of Corey Davis being gone, where to me, logically, this one makes sense. I just don't know that they have the willingness to get there in terms of the financials. And even the ability to do that, I think, is another big part because they have some dead money on their cap too, I think. But that's something to me that like on paper right now, they don't have the room, but they are a team. If they can figure out the financials behind it, getting this to work, I think would be the most logical move on the board to me. I think because of the financial part, to me, the odds seem appropriate, but I think still one of the better bets on the board.
Right behind the Titans, we've got the Colts at plus 700 Spags.
This one to me, I think, is the best bet on the board. I think the Colts actually do have the salary cap room to make it work right now. They also have Carson Wentz back in, and not back, but in tow now, back with Frank Reich. And that's something that I think they're trying to do everything they can, much like with Phillip Rivers last year. They're going to do whatever they can to help Carson Wentz succeed because they know they invested money in this guy, whether it be the contract itself, just going out and getting him, all of that. Reich certainly also tying himself to Carson Wentz. I think politically there's a lot of stuff with how that'll be perceived that for him, he needs this to work. And I do think in this spot, getting Julio Jones in alongside with T.Y. Hilton, who's already talked about, they're bringing the deep ball back to Indianapolis this year because Phillip Rivers couldn't really throw it last year. It all kind of bodes well to me where if you have a threesome of Hilton and Julio Jones and Michael Pittman in the mix, like that's a really nasty group of receivers. They're not quite, some of the elite top threes elsewhere, but probably as good as we saw with Julio in Atlanta. So I think to me, or maybe not quite as good, but comparable at least. So that's something to me that I think if this move happened, the Colts, I think would be benefited by it. Julio would be benefited by it. I think there's a lot of ways here too, where they're a contender who could use that jump that Julio would give them.
Yeah, another dome team. That would be a nice transition for Julio as well. And you look at Pittman's, I think, going to take a big jump. They've got several backs. Taylor, Mack will come back healthy. Wentz, I mean, say what you want about him. I think he's in a pretty good position to have a resurgence here before he got injured. I'm not going to go in a lofty rant about the Eagles, but Wentz certainly has shown that he can do it at times. So if they added Julio, that would be a team in a division that, I mean, we're going to talk a lot of NFL between now and the start of the season, but you look at the Jaguars, then you got the Titans and you got the Texans who are a mess. It's wide open. The Colts are a team that absolutely could be in the hunt, not just for a playoff seed, but a decent one. So this is a team that, again, I think makes a lot of sense, and I wouldn't be stunned at all if Julio ends up there.
Speaking of a mess, we now have the Packers at plus 900. Spags, what do you think is going to happen here?
I don't think there's any chance they could pull this off. I don't think they have the financials to make it work. And the Packers, it's sort of like when the Packers are a heavy favorite sometimes, or, a higher bet than you'd expect for winning the championship. It's because they're such a public team. And I think that there's sort of a connection people may make for, like they're going to get him to make Aaron Rodgers happy. And there's just no way to make that work. It also doesn't make sense with Devontae Adams because you're basically going to make him less effective with how he's been fantastic, taking a ton of targets off the table. So in this spot, to me, I don't think this makes any sense. And in some respects, I think other than the bets we're going to get to that are really far-fetched, this might be the worst bet on the board.
Correct. The only reason they're even on the board is because people are making that connection, like that they can snap their fingers and just like make Aaron Rodgers happy by giving him, another big-time weapon that it really doesn't seem realistic. So that would be a team that I'm not even considering. And at 9, they would have to be a lot higher than 9-1 for me to put money on them.
Just really quick, I'm curious, do either of you think Aaron Rodgers will be back in Green Bay this season?
I think there's some bad signs of him reportedly being out there playing golf with John Elway. That could just be something, maybe some sage wisdom from a guy informally. I don't know. But I think it's blowing in a bad direction. And Rodgers has had a weird offseason with himself where he clearly wants to get more famous, wants to be the Jeopardy host and all of that. But I think at the end of the day, the Packers have no motivation to get rid of him. And I think unless it gets really acrimonious, I just don't see how that actually is going to be a move that's made.
Ben, you think he'll be back?
I do. I do think he'll be back. First of all, as Spags said, they could just say, we don't really care what you want. Like he's going to have to pull a Carson Palmer if he wants to really get out of there. So we'll see what happens with that. I think when it comes down to it, he's made his grievances known, but I don't know. I mean, we're seeing more and more players have more leverage than they've ever had, and they understand that, but I do not think he will force his way out before the season starts in a couple of months now.
Yeah, the golfing with Elway thing kind of makes me a little uneasy. I know he is. There's a rumor that he wants to be in the same conference division as Patrick Mahomes. So don't love that, but we'll see.
It would just be seeing him get beat out by Drew Lock would be a real kick to his ego. So I don't know if he wants that.
Easy. That is a fellow Mizzou grad.
I'm a big Drew Lock fan, believe me.
Oh, you are? I forgot. Yes, you are.
Big Drew Lock fan.
All right, good deal. Next, we've got the Eagles, Bills, Giants, Cowboys, all between plus 1,000 and plus 1,600. Ben.
I mean, well, it's not, the Cowboys have like 10 receivers. So no, I guess in theory, I could see the Giants. That would kind of be interesting, maybe recreate what they had with Odell to an extent. They've got Saquon coming back. And obviously, if they want to make it work with Daniel Jones, they need more weapons. Ingram is okay, but I'm not in love with their receivers. So I guess the Bills, that would be an all-in situation. I don't think they need they already did this with Diggs. They've got the pieces. So these teams are north of 10-1 for a reason.
Yeah, I would agree here. I think these are also not great bets, which is why they have such long odds. The Jets are a team where if you can get those odds somewhere, I don't think they're the craziest one in the world, where they got Corey Davis. I think if they knew that Julio Jones would be a realistic option, I think that would sort of make them have looked more at a guy like Julio instead. Obviously, those guys being kind of similar receivers and Julio being the best version of it. I think that to me would have been an interesting one. So the Jets, if you get them on the board, I think that's sort of the long shot I would take. But these ones, I think they're just on here because they're teams that are sort of either popular or talked about a lot or known to sort of make these kinds of splashy moves, or like the Bills, like Ben is saying, they just made this exact same move for a guy, Stephon Diggs, who's younger and already does some of the same things, but probably better based on last year at least. So in this spot, I think really only the long shot I would take is the Jets, and even then, it's probably the flimsy one. The Colts to me is the best bet on the board by a wide margin.
Okay, well, that was going to be my question. Odds aside, who do you think Julio is giving his rose to?
I think he'll look into the eyes of the Colts and recognize that in this moment in time that he needs to pretend to really fall in love with this team and just get through it, much like The Bachelor itself. So I say that's what it'll be. I think it's going to be the Colts.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely the best bet. There's no doubt about that because you're getting 7-1. I mean, Ravens are the favorite, though. These books know what they're doing, so I wouldn't be stunned to see him in the Niners uniform or even in Baltimore. Those seem to be the favorites, even though I don't personally get it.
I mean, as long as he goes there for the right reasons,
Good point. Where's Randone when we need him?
Do we all watch The Bachelor here or no? Am I the only one?
Well, I don't think Kayla knows this, that we used to work with one of the former Bachelor, not a former Bachelor, but he was on The Bachelorette and Bachelor in Paradise.
I did know that. I did know that, actually.
Yeah, he's on many shows with Mr. Randone back in the day.
He is blocked. I am not blocked by Mr. Randone. I know he's blocked my boy Pete. He's blocked a few of our coworkers. I think Adam, our boy Shit My Money's gotten a Randone block, if I'm recalling. But here's the thing. I only had positive experiences with the guy, and Chris is support Chris's. So shout out to Chris Randone.
Yes. I feel bad for him, but hope he's well.
He's doing he's killing the stock market. He's got other things. He's a hustler, man. That guy, he may not have been like the best DFS host around, but neither am I. So no skin off my back. But I would say for him, like he finds ways to make it work and makes compelling content of it on social media. So all the credit in the world to Mr. Randone.
I just meant his relationships.
No, you're just bashing him. I get it. I'm not.
I don't know. I don't know him personally at all.
I'll fight you for Chris Randone, Kayla. I'll tell you. We have some fun on this show, but boy, you don't come on my former co-host Bachelor contestant combinations, especially. Poof, no, Missy.
I just meant I feel bad for his past relationship. I was rooting for them and it didn't end well, but that's neither here nor there. Friends, the NBA playoffs are almost here, which means it's NBA showdown season. The great news about this is that our NBA Weekly Express Pass gives you full access to all of our tools for NBA showdown and single game, including player projections and ownership projections. Our NBA Express Pass is only $4.95, but we have a special deal running that expires today. Hello, which you can access by going to awesemo.com/promos. That's awesemo.com/promos. to receive 2 weeks of NBA Express for the price of one, only $4.95. This pass will also give you access to lineup builder, ownership rankings, and big board player values for all slates. This is your last chance to grab this deal as it expires today, so use promo code PLAYIN at checkout. That's play-in. All right, Ben, it's your time to shine. We've got PGA Championship weekend bets. Since we're covering other sports, let's talk about one other sport with some interesting betting and DFS options. It's PGA Championships weekend, and while your initial DFS lineups may not survive the cut, there will still be chances to make money this weekend. We'll turn to the good Dr. Ben Rasa for some guidance on what bets and DFS options look good in the final 2 rounds. It is a mess down there in South Carolina, so Ben, take it away.
Yeah, so, obviously the show is live and they are playing golf as we speak, and I don't have the scores up, so I don't know exactly where everybody is, but I will say the big thing with live betting in golf is when the course is very difficult. So there's 2 different schools of thought. There are some guys that they're done. They've played 36 holes and they're moving up the board by not playing right now. Then there are other guys that are on the course that most likely are dropping. So when you're looking to live bet, there are some guys that as the day gets later and later, their odds are actually going to be moving down because they are done and they've completed their 36 holes. So looking at the wind now, I think there are a couple guys that did play in the morning that are kind of safe and sound. They're not, at the top of the board by any stretch, but you look at a guy like Matthew Fitzpatrick, he's sitting T22nd right now at even par. But by the end of the day, that could be in the, T15 range, and he's only going to be a couple shots, 5 shots back of Phil, but I'm not really worried about that. He could be only 2 or 3 shots out of the first page of the leaderboard. So you look at him, he played early, and there's a couple other guys in that same range. You're going to obviously want to weigh the odds here, but like Tony Finau, John Rahm, they're an afterthought in this tournament right now. They're sitting like 40th, 45th, but it only takes one good round, and they'll go out early tomorrow, and they should get better conditions. You can post around, and then you get to move up the board while the leaders are playing. So in a tournament like this, my biggest advice for building, whether it's weekend lineups or taking some live bets, and certainly in our premium Slack chat, we will be in there, breaking down the individual matchups and whatnot, is don't be afraid to take someone who's, 6, 8, 10, even 10 shots off the lead. Obviously, you're going to get massive odds. It's a low probability. But this is not a tournament where you're not going to be able to pick up ground. If you go out and shoot even 3 or 4 under, you could move up 8, 10 shots because as we've seen today, I'll give you one more example. Cam Tringale shot 2 under yesterday. And when I got on the show, he was 10 over through 10 holes today. So it can happen that quickly. There's no doubt in my mind this leaderboard is going to flip. So look to those guys, particularly the Euros. I think Fitzy, Rahm, these guys are built to go low. And I think we're going to start to see some of the big names move up the board because right now, a lot of unknowns lurking on the first page. And then Phil Mickelson is winning the tournament, which is one of the more disturbing things that I've ever said on this show.
I love Phil. Phil's one of my faves.
It's very bad. I bet Phil to miss the cut. Just to show you where I'm at, I bet Phil to miss the cut and he's winning the tournament.
I was going to say, what are names we would know that are in the top 20?
So Usti apparently just birdie to take the lead, which is great. But again, he's not a super well-known name. Bryson and Brooks Koepka are right there, okay. Only a couple shots back. And they're probably going to be the guys that most people look to. And it's not to say they can't win the tournament. They're some of the best players in the world. I would just say that you don't want to just omit everyone who's not on that first page of the leaderboard. This is a long tournament. It's very, very windy. There's water, there's hazards, there's weird like garbage that you can get into. It looks like a jungle in some places. You can make big numbers quickly. So just like an NBA game, we've seen time and time again, a team's up 15, 20 points. It can be erased in a half a quarter. So just like golf, don't overreact. And certainly one of the many reasons to get inside the ropes at Awesemo, we've got a great team looking at these odds because there's still a lot of value in this tournament.
There is an important question in the chat, which normally we don't get a lot of super chats during this show because we have such a tight schedule with all these segments and all that to get to that people don't get them in. But Kevin S. in the chat, Ben, asking, would you buy his fellow Kevin S. at plus 10 million to win the Masters? I know there's an ongoing bit with Kevin Stadler. So I guess I got to ask you, Ben, would you take those odds?
Yeah. So he's probably, that's probably 10 million to 1 to get in the Masters. But if he gets in the Masters somehow one time, you never know. I was saying in chat, this would have been the tournament for him because he shoots 80 every week. And if you shoot 80 this week, you're with a bunch of your friends because guys are hanging monster numbers out there this week. So Kevin S., maybe one day it will be his time on tour, but unfortunately, don't think it'll be at Augusta anytime soon. It's
unfortunate. Also, going back to what you said, Bryson said yesterday, it's the hardest course he's played in his professional career. So that's good.
It's tough. It's like a links course. There's no trees. Like and there's no bunkers. They're called waste areas. It's a really unique course. I kind of like it, to be honest, but at the same time, I really don't like it. It's just a weird, I don't know. I can't get a feel for it.
Which one is it, Ben?
It just brings uncertainty, and uncertainty is good for betting. There's no doubt about it because it means that guys can really move up the board quickly, and you can exploit the odds in a lot of different ways.
What a slap in the face to bunkers everywhere that they're getting downgraded to being called waste areas. I know. That's a real step backwards.
Is that politically correct?
Yeah.
I was just going to say, yeah.
Yeah, I know. 2021, I didn't think they would go that route, but it's, you know, when you only see these, that's the thing about golf majors, you know, it's a rotational. You don't see these courses year after year. So it's not like we've seen this course for 10 years. We haven't seen this course since 2012.
Wow.
So there's just not a lot to go off of. And again, I know I just said this, but when you don't have a lot to go off of, it's an opportunity because no one really has the information. And I think being open to taking some long shots, you know, there's going to be guys 50, 100 to 1 that after tomorrow will be amongst the favorites. There's no doubt. You just got to try to figure out who that's going to be.
Isn't it also...
Sorry, I have a mean joke real fast that I don't even believe in. And Kayla, you can get to your real point in a second. But I mean, the only waste area I know is when Eric Lindquist is on the show and I look at his part of the screen. That's all I had.
How long were you waiting to say that?
I had to get it out. Otherwise, we're just aided my soul. Anyway, Kayla, please go on.
I guess we'll find out if Eric's watching in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. No, isn't it the longest course? One of the longer courses that they've ever played.
Yeah, longest PGA? Ever. Now they can do things with the tee boxes and whatnot, but certainly when you combined, some of the holes are into the wind and guys are not able to handle those. The holes are impossible in the wind.
Sounds like a ton of fun out there.
Yeah, I would love to see like an average to above average regular, like honestly, our boy Eric Lindquist, who's a phenomenal golfer. I'd love to see someone play the course and see what they would shoot if they could break 100.
How do we make that happen?
That'd be a fun bit. That'd
be such a good, like, I would love to gamble on something like that.
I don't know that I would. But no, that would be fun.
Yeah. Honestly, if we could somehow get access to something like that, I don't know. Like, I feel like we're not quite there in terms of our name cachet as a company yet. But boy, if we could somehow get Eric on a fancy course and bet on his production in one of the slower parts of the season, I would really have no issue with that at all. In fact, would quite support it. Yeah,
be a good time.
Who do we have to talk to make that happen?
I don't know.
Spags.
Yeah, our Lord and Savior.
Lord and Savior. All right, sending a prayer up. Let's head to the Diamond Out. Thank you, Ben, for your PGA Championship insight. Best of luck to everyone betting that. Let's head to the Diamond for biggest bat for some of the top bets and plays on tonight's MLB slate before the MLB Live Before Lock crew takes you through the full slate right after this show. Which of these top 5 odds getters on OddsShopper do you think is the best overall bet to hit a home run tonight? There he is, Shohei Ohtani, plus 280, Tatis, plus 285, Schwarber, plus 290, Crone, plus 300, Meadows, plus 300. Did I say that right? I don't know. Spags, we'll start with you.
Yeah, actually, you did. CJ Crone is a good call there and a correct name pronunciation as well. I think he's the obvious one. Playing at Coors is certainly going to be something that's going to be an added benefit, but I do have some concerns that it's been something I've talked about a little bit more recently, and it's something I think with Coors in particular, I'm trying to watch a little bit more, especially, you know, the weather is only 74 degrees there. That's starting to get better, but still not exactly where it needs to be. But the guy he's going against today, it's Seth Frankoff, I think, for CJ Crone, has been doing one thing well, just keeping the ball down, keeping that launch angle low, keeping the fly ball rate low. And at Coors, that is one way you can survive. He doesn't have the strikeout stuff to get through, but I think that's one ding for CJ Crone, where you're getting the boost in odds because he's playing at Coors and not necessarily the matchup itself. And obviously, you know, Coors is great. Don't get me wrong here. When you hear the guys talk about it on Live Before Lock, don't go like, oh, well, Spags said Coors is overrated. Like, it's not, but I think when the ownership is really heavy for DFS, something to keep in mind. But the guy for me is going to be actually Shohei Ohtani. I don't love taking the leading odds getter because I do think that's sort of an easy way to do it. But he's playing in a park that's also played pretty well for power, not the hottest day at the Anaheim Park, but still going to be a spot for a show where he's been raking the ball really well. Going against a pitcher who really has not had much of a sample size to point to and really not anything impressive either. So I think in this spot for Shohei Ohtani, kind of riding the hot hand, the guy who's ebbing the right way, to me looks like the best bet on the board.
I was going to change it up, but that is the guy that I also want to go to. And as someone who's a very casual baseball player, I want to actually just pass it right back to Spags. How impressive is this? Because of course I see the Sports Center bottom line, and I see this every time you hear his name, you hear Babe Ruth. No one's done this since Babe Ruth. This is crazy. Like, how impressive is what he's doing? How do you rate this? I guess I should ask. I
mean, I'm impressed by it. I think my bar for being impressed, though, is probably a little bit higher where like, guys have done things like this historically. I guess for the now, it is sort of a little more uncommon, but it's also uncommon because we don't train our athletes to do it, to do like Show had in Japan where he's pitching and playing the field. Like it only happens right now in MLB The Show. And even that's something that maybe it'll lead to it being an actual thing that occurs more in real life in 10 years. But for the most part, we encourage our guys to be specialists. So in that respect, it's impressive. But at the same time, like we kind of deliberately undercut our guys where it's a thing for football where you get told, hey, play offense or defense. We do that for baseball too, where pitch or hit. And you normally don't let those guys develop in the way that they should. So I think that's part of it too, where maybe we'd have more Ohtanis if we embrace that more. But for now, like he's been great. I have no issues with him. I think I want to have him figure out the walks and the control issues part of things as a pitcher. But in terms of just the fun of it all, like it's exciting, and baseball needs things that are exciting.
100%. And now for biggest arm, which of these top 5 odds getters on OddsShopper do you think is the best strikeouts over bet tonight? And is there a good under bet that you like? We've got Aaron Nola over under 7.5 strikeouts, Tyler Glasnow 7.5, Trevor Bauer 7.5, Steven Strasburg 6.5, and Mike Minor 6.5. Ben, we'll go to you.
I'm going to go to Glass now. The Rays are a team that I think they're actually going to be a pretty popular stack tonight. They're not a massive favorite, but a pretty sizable favorite going up against this Blue Jays team, and, moderate strikeouts. But I respect his stuff here, and I look at the over-under. It is sizable, but I do think they'll have the lead. I think he can go deep in the game. So looking at these odds, I mean, Bauer was the guy that I was originally drawn to, and maybe I should have just stuck with him. But I'm going to go to the Rays side of things and go with Glass now that he could push over 7.5.
Yeah, I think going to the arm talent is not something I would begrudge, but I do think the line for Mike Minor is a little bit low at 6.5. So he'd be the one I would take the over on. And we talk about this bet a lot on the show. Obviously, it's on the show pretty much every day. But I do think some of the other pitchers are going to look better for DFS potentially. But Minor too for DFS and for betting, I think is an interesting spot going against Detroit. The run total a little bit higher than you want to see at 3.7 implied runs, given how bad Detroit's been on the year. But on the year, they're striking out at a 34% clip against lefties, and Minor does have good enough strikeout stuff, not quite as overpowering as he's been in other parts of his career, but still on the year, a 24% K rate, a little bit higher than that, hinging close to 25%. He's in a really good matchup. So I think, going to a guy who has maybe slightly less good stuff, like nobody's going to accuse Mike Minor of being Trevor Bauer in terms of any positive pitching mechanism you would look at or stat or data point. But I do think Mike Minor is just really a guy who should be in the best possible spot on the slate. And going against Detroit, I think been clearly one of the better spots, either Detroit or Seattle. If you could pitch against those guys, you're in the hunt to be one of the best bets and possibly to throw a no-hitter too.
All right. It is now time for the Dr. Ben Rasa prop bet of the day. One of our favorites around here. Dr. Ben, you are now at 19-6 after Rui Hachimura over 13.5 points ended up one of the better bets on the board last night. How does it feel to be this close to win number 20?
Feels good. That went well last night. He stayed on the floor. The Wizards every time they play Indiana, they push over like 140 points. So there was plenty to go around. Got there pretty easily. And let's hopefully end the week with win number 20. That'd be perfect.
Question. If you get win number 20, do we get the lab coat back?
You know what? The stethoscope and the lab coat, if we hit this one, we're on a nice streak outside of Fearless. It'll make an appearance next week.
Next Thursday, probably.
Next Thursday.
Okay. We won't forget
Champions
that.
League. Why
Here
not?
we go. Here we go. Dr. Ben, we're on pace to cover 4 different sports over the course of this hour. And with your diverse interest, it seems like perhaps you're ready to make it 5 with some bet on something like college lacrosse or the Scandinavian Curling League. But we know you'll do your best to lead us all to the promised land as always. So lay it on us with Dr. Ben Ross's prop bet of the day. Scandinavian curling. Wow.
I don't know the rules of curling. I do watch curling sometimes, but I don't know how it works. I just know they have the brooms.
It's like horseshoes, but you sweep along the way.
I actually feel like I know quite a bit about curling.
Or bocce, maybe more of the better comp. But bocce with like sweeping. Bocce plus sweeping.
Bocce plus sweeping. All right. I'm gonna do some research there. No, we're going to the NBA streets. Big game tonight. We're gonna get our thoughts on it in a minute in terms of showdown, but I'm going to do kind of what I did last night, different reason, but same concept. I'm going to Jaren Jackson Jr. tonight, over 14.5 points. This was kind of where Ruiz was last night, and it's a simple thing. I thought he could stay out of foul trouble. With Jackson, it's the simple fact that we haven't seen him basically at all this year. He's been hurt, and he's worked back nicely. He's played 20, 25 minutes for 10 games. Then the last game of the regular season against Golden State, he played 31. That was a key game. Then in the must-win against San Antonio, he played 31. So this is 2 straight games where he's pushed over 30 minutes for the first time all year. Now, granted, he only played 11 games during the year because he was coming back from a knee injury. So I get why they wanted to be cautious. But now is the time for them to kind of, we saw it wasn't just him. Joe Val pushed for 38 minutes. They tightened the rotation. And I think the complaint for Memphis, the whole year was there's just so many guys in and out of that rotation. But tonight I expect a very condensed one. And Jackson, to me, going to push north of 30 minutes again. So I don't really have a ton of analysis. It's a game that I do think will be competitive. It's just, in the NBA, minutes equal production. We all know that. And Jackson's a talented guy. He's been shooting terrible from 3, but it's such a small sample. I don't really care. He's taking over 5 a game. I do think he can stretch this defense. And in a game with obviously the explosive Warriors on the other side, they're going to need some contributors outside of Ja and Joe Val maybe on the inside. So I look to Jaren Jackson, pending he can stay out of foul trouble, as someone who can push over 14.5, and at minus 108 Spags, that's a really good number. So I look for him to have a pretty big night tonight, and it starts with the fact that I think he's healthy now and he's going to play sizable minutes for the Grizzlies.
Yeah, I have him at 16 projected real life points today, and I think that number looks fine to me to get over on. So the 14.5, I think, is a really good one to go with. And I think, too, there's a lot of pathways for him to get there. You're going to probably see Kevon Looney dedicating his attention whenever he's on the court to stopping Jonas Valanciunas. And not like Looney's actually going to stop him, but it is going to be one body going there, where then you go to the rest of the guys, and who's going to keep Jaren Jackson off the glass if you do sort of limit Joe Val to 1 or 2 less rebounds here and there. I think you add that, too, with the potential here for this game to be getting a little bit closer to blowout potential. If Steph Curry were to be going off, there's some pathways here for Memphis to be trailing late, where you just need to see Jaren Jackson get a few more shots up from deep, or maybe even playing, the stretch 5 because of Joe Val being played off the floor in some way. Not things that I think are going to happen, but I do things that are in the realm of possibility. And you really just have to worry about the foul issues like Ben's talking about. So yeah, taking the over on this one, and generally liking Jaren Jackson as a play tonight seemed like both wise things to do today.
Ben, I thought you were really going to give us like a college lacrosse one here.
I will say, so tomorrow there are games. There's 2 games tomorrow, 2 games Sunday. For people that are betting college, look, first of all, college, just lacrosse in general, if you're unfamiliar, I was thinking about this before the show, like it's a mix between hockey. It reminds me a lot of hockey, and it reminds me a little of soccer, because you can sub on the fly. It's back and forth. It's like soccer, but they score obviously more than 0 goals. Tomorrow, Virginia and Georgetown play, and Georgetown's been rolling. They found something. I know the ACC is just dominant in lacrosse. North Carolina, Duke, Virginia, they're all very, very good teams. But Georgetown at the end of the year, Spags, as I know you know, against Denver, they really found something. They have a fantastic All-American goalie. They're dominating possession. And in lacrosse, the big thing is, can you win the faceoffs? And against Virginia, I think they can. So look for Georgetown tomorrow. If you want to sweat, noon, right on a Saturday, a little hungover, get a good breakfast sandwich, get to your ESPNU, turn on the game. Georgetown Hoyas are going to win tomorrow.
We all know that. Georgetown, I mean, who hasn't had their Georgetown futures locked in
Come on now, easy
for
game.
Lacrosse? Yeah, I mean, hey, that's honestly perfect time, because basketball I know starts early tomorrow too. So get in your college lacrosse betting too. A little bonus prop bet of the day from Dr. Ben.
There we go.
Yeah, lacrosse is where they carry those sticks with the little nets on them. That is correct, chat. You nailed it.
Ben, have we talked about this? I worked for the PLL.
You mentioned that. Yeah, the PLL is starting back up. Lacrosse is great. It's not a sport it's awesome sport. Not a sport I bet on a lot, but college lacrosse, definitely an edge there. There's no doubt about it.
I was very new to it coming from the Midwest. It's not super huge in Southwest Missouri, but it's growing. But no, it's a lot of fun. It moves quick, keeps your attention. Loved it. Love the players too. They could not be nicer people. Like, great guys, always up to do interviews. That's really important.
That's what Lax Bros are known for, being charming fellows and great across the board.
Don't hate on the Lax Bro.
They actually didn't like the term Lax Bro.
Of course they don't, because it's been beaten into the ground by all the Lax Bros.
We try to move away from that, but everyone I encountered could not have been nicer. Anyway, let's get back to the hardwood. Tonight we'll feature the final play-in game, with the Grizzlies headed to face Steph Curry and the Warriors for the right to face the Jazz. That's Jazz Rasta, you Spags. Once again, there are some big single game contests in DFS tonight. So let's dig deep on the game. We're going to go one by one through these. Who looks like the most viable captain on DraftKings and the MVP on FanDuel, Spags?
So I think that, like I talked about yesterday, didn't end up getting the right captain, but I did get the approach correctly there. And I think the move today to be plus EV as much as possible and to try to get a shot to finish in first, either solo or probably more likely chopping with a bunch of people, is to not play Steph Curry as your captain on DraftKings. And I know that's going to be people will be like, oh, it's crazy. But that's just how it is for the most part. Where Russell Westbrook was the obvious one, and it was weird yesterday with the ownership on DraftKings in particular. Westbrook came in lower owned than we had projected, and I think I would have just thought anyway. I think people maybe are starting to adapt a little bit more to realize that just paying for the highest price guy and putting him at captain is generally going to be a not great showdown move. But you saw Domantas Sabonis really highly owned. People instead went there a lot. So I think by that same logic, Steph Curry, I think, will be highly owned today. And I also think Jonas Valanciunas might be a little bit over-owned. So if you want to be a real hero, not playing either guy at captain, I think will give you a lot of different lineup looks than most people out there and an actual shot at winning. But I think really, for me, the first part is just not playing Steph Curry at captain. So I think that's the key thing. And then at that point, being willing to play anybody at captain, like Daniel Gafford going into yesterday, I don't think you would land on as a sort of natural approach. But I do think that that's sort of what it is that at that point, the captain is a crapshoot of guys who just have to get over 40 fantasy points. So play any guy you think can get over 40 fantasy points today at captain. But I think just not play Steph Curry because everybody will be doing that.
No doubt. That's definitely step one. And Joe Val, I do think looking at, now that his minutes were there 20 and 23 and 23, he's going to get some interest. I think that Ja is kind of interesting because I think what happens if you can stomach not taking the big two, you immediately look to like, all right, let me save as much salary so I can load up at utility. And Ja doesn't really do that, but he's going to be on the court for, I think you could push again for 40 plus minutes. He will be involved. I don't know. I do think he has a pretty big range of outcomes in how he plays. But the thing about Showdown is I know it sounds stupid, but you almost don't care because you need to get everything right. And if he has a poor game, whether you have him at captain or utility, you're probably going to be in some sort of trouble. So you're really just looking for the optimal here. These are extremely small edges. So I think that Ja has that ceiling, and I'm totally agree. Could you get wiped off the face of the earth by Steph taking 22 threes like he did against Memphis just a couple of days ago? Yeah, that could be a big problem. But if you're looking to win a contest and you're looking to avoid dupes, I'm 100% with Spags. Try to mix it up. Try to, mix and match your captain and hope that you can survive what is the aggressive fade up top.
Okay, Ben, are there any players who seem likely to be core plays?
So Steph is going to have to, his points prop is 38.5 tonight. That was where I almost went for my prop of the day because that's ridiculous. But, these guys that are going to be on the court need to be involved. Even Draymond to an extent. I know it's tough because he's just never involved and he's even worse shooter than he was, but he's still someone with the peripherals. He's so impressive and he's obviously on the court a ton. So you can look to those guys. It's really dependent on what you do at captain, but the raw points will come into play and the salary will come into play. But yeah, I like those guys, especially if you're saving money at captain. And then, I already mentioned him, but Jaren Jackson is the guy that I think he could be a captain. And if not, you definitely can go to him in the utility. He's going to be involved tonight.
I think the core plays to me are still going to be Steph Curry and Jonas Valanciunas. I think those guys should probably be in the vast majority of our lineups, if not every single lineup for Steph, I think, at a utility spot. And I think that's perfectly fine. As I mentioned yesterday on both the Live Before Lock show and on here, I did have 100% of Sabonis and Westbrook. I just tried to make my exposure more at the utility spot than the captain spot because I think there's really no pathway to those guys not being in the mix yesterday. I'd say the same thing today for me with Steph and Joe Val, where those guys should be core plays. I just think at captain, they're going to be really overvalued. But I'd say core plays too. John Morant, I think, is a core play as well. I think Ben mentioned the captain upside. I'm with him on that. I think he's also a really good utility play because he's playing today probably at least 40 minutes, if not upwards of 44 minutes. There's a lot of ways here where you can just basically save every minute on the court because this is as do or die as it gets. If they lose this game, they go home. No reason to leave it all to not leave it all in the field. But I think that's sort of the main guys I'm looking at. Draymond, I think, is on the cusp of a core play. And I guess in terms of maybe pay down options, honestly, the pay down options are so weak that I think spreading those around is going to be the more interesting move. But I think we're going to talk about the value play next. So I'll save one other core play that people will think is one today that I'm going to go significantly under on.
All right. And Spags, who are the most interesting value players?
So the one that's going to come up, I think, on any optimizer, if you run it today with Awesemo projections, really anywhere credible, is going to be Michael Mulder. He's too cheap today, but also he's also a guy that saw over 20 minutes last game. So that's important to note too, that he did get the court time, but he had such low usage at 13% that I think that he's going to be really overowned today as that value option. Because really the main thing with these showdowns is that when you have a value option that stands out, it was the case with Robin Lopez yesterday. There's sometimes, or really pretty much every time, too many pathways for that value option to not quite get there. And all you need is one guy in that price range or one guy who's direct leverage on this player to go off, and then that completely ruins a day for you. So I think to me, that's going to be Michael Mulder, and I think just getting away from him and being able to take whatever value you can. Desmond Bain, I think, is interesting just in terms of being a little bit more expensive, but being able to get hopefully some amount of steady minutes, and particularly for his defense. But I think to me, just get away from Michael Mulder would be the move. Cap him at 20%. I think that's what I'm going to do today.
Yeah, I mean, there's really no super cheap, Looney and Bain are guys, they're on the cheaper side, and they're certainly going to be in play. I don't see anything, like Tillman. As Joe Val stays out of foul trouble, there's just not enough to get there, I don't think. You're going to need something. And listen, if you're making enough lineups, you can plan for scenarios like that. But I wouldn't advise that on a single bullet. And yeah, you mentioned Mulder. I think that is a pretty interesting fade because unlike, traditional slates, where some things are a little different. With Showdown, it's all about the dollar, and you're funneled to a price point where he's really the only option. So everyone that builds like that is going to click his name, and that just masses ownership in a way that's not productive. So long term, probably coming out ahead if a guy's going to be that owned down there. So I'd stick to the Bain, Looney types pool, even though they're in the mid range, and kind of build a little more balance tonight.
All right, good stuff. We're going to now head to our no house advantage prop or not. Before we do, I have to just clear the air. A lot of talk about what I said about lacrosse players. I'm speaking from my personal experience. I only dealt with professional players. I have no idea, what goes on in college. Maybe that's a different
like
story.
Anything else, just,
It's like, I'm only speaking from my personal experience. I'm not going to judge a group of people based on the mistakes or crimes of one or a few people. Everyone I encountered was kind and gracious with their time. That's all I'm going to say.
I'm impressed that
small egos.
Your publicity team being able to whip that up while you're on the air is amazing. That you're able to
impressive.
Get that statement. Wow, what a team effort.
No, it's just like people are dogging me, but I'm aware of what goes on, like what went on. So I'm only speaking from my personal experience with who I encountered.
There's every sport has some longitudinal issues with it, especially college sports, like, wrestlers. I know, I know a lot of guys who wrestled in college who were like really good dudes, but also like a lot of them have done some sketchy things. Same thing with hockey guys, like really any sport in basketball and football players, we all know those guys are well above reproach, would never do anything wrong. But yeah, the other sports, like everybody's got their troubles.
Exactly. All right. Moving on. Let's go back to the NBA for no house advantages prop or not. Here are some of no house advantages props of the day for key players. Do you guys like the over or under on them, and how many points would you assign? First up, we've got Kyle Anderson, over under 4.5 rebounds. Ben.
So this is one that, again, I never would have thought about, but looking at Awesemo's projections, we have this pushing over, and it's a situation. I know Joe Val gobbles up a ton, but there'll be plenty to go around. And it's a simple fact when you look at this line at no house advantage, just not high enough. So going to keep it pretty brief here because it's just obvious on a single game. You don't have as many options. Kyle Anderson's rebound prop, most people will overlook. It's a good one to start your card with and push over.
Yeah, just because it's a minute security of Kyle Anderson, like normally he's been sort of getting nickel and dimed in a few minutes, but should safely get over 30 minutes here. So I have him projected for 6.5 rebounds today. As Ben mentioned, Awesemo has it being the best over bet on the board, taking the over on rebounds today. So this one, not quite a 6-pointer on the shorter card today for no house advantage, but probably a 4 or 5-pointer on most of your lineups.
All right, Spags, we've got Grayson Allen over under 13.5 points plus assists.
So these next two lines are ones that, according to Awesemo, have no chance of getting over the numbers here, and that's because of the rotations. One thing to keep in mind, and I think this is something I guess I could save to the next one, but I'll just say it now because we're running low on time anyway. Play only one of these next two props because I think there is some potential here for one of these guys to not play at all. But with Grayson Allen, I think, for him, he's been in the rotation. He was hurt last game, only played one stint in the first half, didn't play in the second half. So it's clearly a good bet because he's probably not going to get a lot of minutes. The issue is that if he plays no minutes, I think the prop becomes invalidated. So that's something to keep in mind there, is that you need these guys to play still. You're going to be unproductive or not get enough court time. They're not going to get enough court time, but the question is, are they going to get any? I think he's probably going to get some. So this would look like a 6-pointer right now. But again, only take one of this one or the next one.
Yeah, I mean, I have nothing to add. I think we can loop Tyus Jones in the same bucket here. He's another guy, and he is I just realized now that chat can't see this run sheet. They didn't know. They're thinking, who the hell? Why?
I was trying to tease it, but I'm like, I'm talking about. Yeah, it was a terrible.
No. So Tyus Jones is another prop on no house advantage. I'm taking the show off the rails.
Stealing my thunder there, Ben.
Yeah, I am not a smart person, but that's neither here nor there. I can tell you
that's scary for being a doctor.
Smart enough to be a doctor and smart enough to realize that Tyus Jones is not going to have over 18.5 points in assists tonight, barring something truly miraculous. So as Spags said, these are obvious ones, but you need them to actually see the court. That's the bigger risk, not that they push over the props. So Memphis's tight rotation leads to some obvious values.
Spags, did you want to talk about?
Oh yeah, I guess I'll just tag on real fast. I don't know if we're doing another segue or not. But yeah, Tyus Jones minutes seem to be a little bit safer. So to me, he's the more agreeable 6-pointer. But I think if you're putting multiple lineups at no house advantage today, I would put one with Tyus Jones as a 6-pointer, one is Grayson Allen as a 6-pointer, and then if you could get a third in, put one of them both at the 6 and the 5-point spots tonight. But really, these guys, as Ben mentioned, they're not going to hit the over. That's not the concern here. Unless John Morant just decides, hey, I don't care about this basketball thing anymore, doesn't show up today. Those guys aren't going to play enough, but you just need him to play a little bit. And I think Tyus Jones to me is the safer 6-pointer because he's going to get back a point guard minutes. It's probably just going to be like 4 to 8.
All right. And don't forget to play on No House Advantage, our sponsor, who is taking a different spin on daily fantasy sports. Just download the No House Advantage app today. Use promo code Awesemo to receive a deposit bonus of up to $20 for new signups. Be your friends, not the house. Win big with player props today. Brings us right on to good dog, bad dog. There he is. In real life, there is no such thing as a bad dog. In betting in DFS, there are a lot of underdogs who may have no chance in their game. So who's a good dog to target and who's a bad one? Ben, give us your good dog.
Georgetown lacrosse would be one of them, but I'm gonna take the NBA game. I think that everyone, and I get it, but it seems like the Warriors are locked. They're no lock tonight. Memphis can win this game, and they certainly can cover. 5 points is sizable. So I think counterintuitive, kind of just going against the public here. Everyone kind of just assumes that Steph will get it done, and I think that's pretty fair. But looking at this game, I don't think this is just a plug and play by any stretch. I'm not going to bet the Warriors laying the points tonight. If I have to take a bet, and if I do bet this game, I'm actually going to go to the Memphis side and take the points. I think that Joe Val, Jackson, they can hang in this game. They just played. If they can limit Steph a little, we could see a close one here. So I'll take the Grizzlies as my good dog.
For my good dog, I'm going to go to baseball. I think the Minnesota Twins are a good dog today, going against Tristan McKenzie, a guy who's given up a 17.7% barreled ball rate, along with a really lofty launch angle that should make the ball start to fly in a very uncomfortable way as some of his starts coming up here as it heats up. He's beginning a good strikeout rate, but he's not going to be that owned in DFS, so you're not getting leverage there. But I think overall, taking a Twins to win because you're not getting leverage going against Tristan McKenzie, I think is the move. I think these guys win, and I think they win handily today at Cleveland.
Give us your bad dog, Spags.
My bad dog is actually going to be Memphis. I don't think Memphis can cover here. And I know I'm sort of playing into the chalk narrative, which is that basically Golden State was going to be a shoo-in to make the playoffs anyway, as were the Lakers, no matter what that first outcome was between their playing game. But I think in this spot, Golden State, they need this. They deserve this. If Memphis upsets it, I'll personally be bummed. I hope that I'll get enough in terms of DFS to sort of balance out the disappointment I would feel. But I think to be taking Golden State to win, they are the favorites. They are a great team. And if Steph doesn't make the playoffs, that is one of the all-time sports-related blue ballings of all time, and I simply won't stand for it.
I'm going to hockey. I'm going to say that the Jets, who are a pretty sizable underdog, they're in a bad spot tonight. The Oilers need this game to level the series. Simple as that. They need the game, kind of like what I was doing with the Panthers last night, and that worked out. I think Edmonton at home tonight will get the job done.
Okay. Make or break. Which player or game currently looks like a make or break spot to you on tonight's slate, Ben?
Well, I'll take the basketball game. I'm glad I got to go first on this one. Key game, obviously, win or go home. What's there to say? It should be a very, very good game. I'm excited. Of all the playing games, this is one of the matchups. I mean, the Lakers-Warriors was, of course, a prime time. Everyone wanted to see that. This is a good one, though. I want to see what Memphis can do in this spot, and I expect a competitive game.
My make or break, I guess, is Georgetown lacrosse. So that's just been sort of putting all my finances there over the course of the day. Honestly, my make or break is probably going to be not playing Steph at captain today. As I mentioned, I think I might get really heroic and try to play not very much Joe Val at captain, but that's me. Those two, and then not playing Michael Mulder for DFS, I think are the options. And then besides that, just hoping my guy has some good power strokes and MLB The Show tonight and this weekend.
All right. And finally, for fate of the day, is there one game, player, or team that you anticipate you'll have a lot less interest in than the rest of the public? Spags.
My fade of the day, I guess, would be, it has to be Michael Mulder based on what I talked about today. So I'll go with that. I don't really have a snarky one, I guess, unless I wanted to make one more Eric joke. But and I'm locking Eric.
He's in the chat now. He's in the
for
chat.
all your DFS lineups. I saw he popped back up like Beetlejuice, said his name 3 times, and he shows up. But yeah, I would say that's my fade of the day too.
Yeah, I mean, we're overlapping because there's really nothing to say. Steph at captain is something we've already talked about. I think in these showdowns, the theme is you got to incur some extra risk for potential big reward. Like you can take the chalk option, but long term, you're really not going to set yourself up for major success. So I'm going to probably be shorting the Warriors a little in a couple different areas tonight. And I think if you're playing showdown, that's certainly a way to do it.
Fellas, look at that. Right on time again.
Not bad.
Team
20
effort.
seconds to spare. Give us your plugs for the weekend. Where can we find you? What will we be doing? What's the 411?
I've got a deeper dive tomorrow with Josh Engelman on the NBA playoffs. I think that we got ourselves 4 games tomorrow. So that is Saturday at 12 p.m. Eastern. So I guess, cool, I'll be up early again on Saturday to be prepping and getting ready for that. But tune in and we'll go game by game. And I haven't done a show with Josh in a while, so that'll be a fun one.
I'll be gambling. Fake PGA, lacrosse, watching Spags and Josh. It's going to be a good time. We got a lot of good stuff. That's why I say get on inside the ropes. Awesemo Plus. It's a great time. I know it doesn't feel like sports are in full swing. There's a lot of fringe sports where the edges are big and you can make some easy money heading into football season.
Oh, and also Eytan and Max coming up next. Got to plug those guys. Two great hosts. Going to do some MLB Live Before Lock on the same stream. And I want to make sure, because I don't know if I put that in the run sheet or not. But yes, they're on the same stream. So watch that, because they're going to give you even more strong and more nuanced MLB takes. And I appreciate both those guys. Two great hosts here that you guys should get to know.
Love it. Love it. All right. Thanks, Dr. Rasa. Thanks, Spags. Hope you all have a great weekend. Thanks for tuning in. I am Kayla Knierim. We will be back with you next week on the tip off. We'll see you then. Have a great weekend.
All right, let's get it going. Another Live Before Lock. We've got a gigantic MLB slate tonight, so welcome in, everybody, to the Awesemo community, and we're jammed. 15 games, so we're going to have to do everything we can as we are sandwiched in between, looking at everything from that one NBA game once again. But look, between myself and really, as far as carrying the show when it comes to insight and providing you with ways to make money that maybe are a little bit beyond the obvious, that's Max Smotritskiy. That's at DFS Max for Max. That's at Shander Show for me. I think that's the most Maxes you ever got in probably 4 or 5 sentences. What's up, brother?
Not much, man. I don't know how we drew the short straw of a 15-game slate. This is like craziness. I don't know like what to say. Just play Coors. We're done. Sign us out.
Right. Well, look, I think it's because we're the newest members of the community, right? This is like the bad beat that you have to walk when you're new on the force, right?
Yeah, Friday night and 15 games.
Exactly. All right, we've got a lot of other things happening, not only here on the show, as we'll get you ready, as Max said, a gigantic slate, so we're going to find some value and stack some pitchers as well. But today is the last day for an amazing NBA playoff express pass here on Awesemo that you want to take advantage of. So it's the express pass, only $4.95, but we have this deal that expires today where you can go to awesemo.com/promo. So again, we want to make sure the sense of urgency is it's today, $4.95 with that promo code play in. Thanks, Tyler. And you can look at everything that you get included on here. Again, all we try to do is make it easy for you and the Awesemo community. More tools, more things available, more experts, insight like guys from Max as well. So make sure you smash away on the like button, as well as when people come in later, you want to continue to remind the community. It's a 15-game slate, brother. So let's just look at it from kind of afar here. And when you see these gigantic slates, double digit, 12, 13, up to 15, like we have tonight, is there a common mistake that you see get played often by DFS players that maybe you can serve as a warning, maybe where it isn't as slate by slate specific?
Yeah, so for me, I think it's like nothing is going to be as chalky as you think it is, just because there's so many games. So like even your chalkiest stack is going to be like 12% owned. It's not a big deal. Like if you're really in love with a core stack, go for it. It's not going to be like on a 5-game slate where it's going to be 40% owned and it's better to avoid it in GPPs. No, like on a 15-game slate, people will find a reason to get away from all the plays. So, just don't worry about the chalk too much is my advice today.
We got the super chats going, everything that you want from Max leading up to, again, I'm sure you're going to have a bunch of questions as we get deeper into stacks and pitchers. And for Gene B. Kim right away, I don't know about you, but I may do an impression here or there. I do not do an Eric impression. I think Greg Ehrenberg is the guy for that one for some reason. But here's the thing. I'm so new to this community, Max, that even the impressions that I feel comfortable in, I want to get a couple of more shows under my belt before I start going into Christopher Walken or something else.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. But you can do like like one of the Philly guys' impressions, right? Like a New York guy.
Like I could do Mayor from Easttown. Come home. Got to go get a hoagie. I mean, that's where I am right now. You hear hoagie, right. You hear home, right? I'm from New York, and I start saying it like it's so. It's like it just comes over you. It just hangs over you. No, by all means. Totally. But anything you have for us tonight as we get, I know there are a lot of new people as well. Basketball is winding down. So we see this, Max, a lot of new people coming in to start just right away to the new MLB DFS community. So we'll take every question. And you've worked with me enough now to know that there's nothing so far as a stupid question. At the very least, I've probably asked it. So we want to make sure that everybody feels comfortable from novice to expert to test you in any direction we can go. But let's start with pitchers. And as you mentioned, nothing can be too chalky. Don't really look at ownership as a deterrent here. We're going to see Trevor Bauer right there at the top as far as, with Alex's stack tools and really for top pitchers, looking at DraftKings at least, and then we can kind of whittle down for FanDuel. So I imagine that Bauer, despite going to be at least the highest owned on the slate predicted and having value, there's no deterrent. Chalk here pretty much makes sense.
Yeah, so for Bauer, I mean, he's 11.9K on DraftKings. That's That's probably the highest price we've seen all year. And we're having projected at like 36%. I don't know. I think maybe it'll come in under, like a smidge under, like right around 30, somewhere there. He's not a bad play by any means. You know, he definitely has the best park and best weather of the day for pitching, like 50 degrees in San Francisco. I know Adam was going to San Francisco, ship my money, but I'm like, dude, it's like beautiful on the East Coast. You're going where it's 50 degrees. It doesn't make any sense. Yeah, I mean, he's a great play, but do you need him on the slate? I don't know if he's going to give you that game-breaking score. There's definitely a lot of other pitchers we're going to discuss in situations that you don't think are that good, but they're going to give you savings and will let you stack some really high-powered offenses.
Do you take anything coming off of, I mean, San Francisco had that explosion, right? So I don't know if you look at anything, I mean, even from like a betting standpoint, I'd say, oh, well, maybe San Francisco would be down, especially when you start to look at the matchup. But then individually, when you're justifying going up against that lineup, how much stock would you put into that coming off of a pretty explosive night?
Yeah, I mean, San Fran is a much better team this year than like we're used to. They got a bunch of good hitters there. They don't strike out much. And this park is like better for offense than it used to be, right? They moved the fences in. So the wind's always blowing out there. It doesn't really matter. Yeah, I mean, the thing with Bauer is like his stats, his swinging strike rate is like...
graphics team is now showing that it's a slight favorite. This has been moving.
I got confused there. You guys okay? Everybody hears me instead of
we got
something
you.
else? All right, good. Yeah, so Bauer's like 13% swinging strike rate, which is like not middle of the pack, but like definitely upper part of the pack. But there's guys that are way better than him. Like Glasnow's 17%. Yeah, he's pitching in a minor league park, but does it really matter for GPPs? No, his upside is better than Bauer's in this spot. He's going to give you like a median score that's lower than Bauer on average. But in GPPs, we want a game-breaking score. We want to win the GPP. We don't want to cash, you know? Yeah. So for me, like I would go Glasnow over Bauer every single time at lower ownership.
Jeff Williams on the super chat, Paddock or Minor in a DK GPP. Again, get these likes up, get these chat interaction up with everything that you have. The super chats, you know, are going to go right to the front, but we're looking to help everybody out from, again, people who are brand new to this all the way up to those who have been following along from day one. So make sure you like and share and hit that notification bell. Max, any thoughts on that one for Jeff Williams?
It's close. Like their stats are right at one next to each other. But I thought Paddock was like limited with his pitching. Let me just check. Because that's what I remember him being. Yeah, he only went 84 pitches last start, 4 innings. So that's a little bit scary for me for upside. I don't think, like he's a very young kid, one of their top prospects. I don't think they're going to like kill him and make him throw 110 pitches. Whereas Mike Minor is like in the middle of his career. Like, I don't think they really care. So I would go Minor just based on upside here. Yeah, like he threw 100 pitches last start. He's just going to throw more pitches every single time.
All right, so if you're not going to pay up, clearly, for Trevor Bauer, is there any justification for paying up for my guy here in Aaron Nola?
So Aaron Nola is coming in at only 11% owned, but he's facing Boston in Philly where it's like super hot, right?
Yes.
And
I would take the Red Sox personally tonight, and that's me in Philadelphia, but what do I know? Yeah,
he's 11.6K too. It's not like we're getting a discount.
Yeah.
And his swinging strike rate is like 11%. His xFIP is 373. These are not numbers that I'm like, oh my God, I got to jump and get him. Yeah, I think he's just a fade for me.
Yeah, I'm with you. I know we're going to get back to it when we start looking at stacks and especially Boston right there at the top. But I'm with you. And I'm actually not surprised that you're fading him as opposed to maybe lower exposure because it looks like you're staying away, right?
It's 15 games. Like we have 30 pitchers, you know? You can't play everybody. I mean, I get it. But it's not a good strategy to play everybody. So, yeah, I'm going to like try and zero in on some guys more and just completely go zero on some.
Who is the guy that you're looking at with the most exposure in your lineups that you're paying the most for when it comes to a pitcher? Because you do make great points about managing your money and not just handing over your wallet right away for Nola or Bauer ahead of him. So where does that middle kind of meet for you, Max?
Yeah, so for me, it's Glass now, just because the strikes are like the swinging strikes are out of this world. Plus, like he's facing an all right-handed lineup, and he gives up actually less power to righties, only 21% hard hit rate, and 41% fly balls and 45% ground balls. So I'm expecting the power to be mitigated, which is really all you're worried about in this park, right? Like the park is so small that even like a mediocre hit fly ball goes out. So that part is scary, sure. But there's also strikeouts in this lineup, and you're getting the best strikeout pitcher at like, I don't know, what are we projecting his ownership to be? He's even like down
17% on DraftKings.
Yeah. I mean, that's like half of what Bauer will be, maybe like 1/3 of what Bauer will be. So to me, that's where I'm going double or even triple on ownership here.
Do you have any eyes on Strasburg? And I asked because we brought up Paddock in the question from Jeff that you answered, and he's right there, similar ownership, similar range as far as, percentage of being in the top two, at least with Alex and DraftKings. So I don't know how much exposure at all you have in Strasburg tonight. It is the Orioles in town down there.
Yeah, I mean, they're saying that he's not on a pitch count. Isn't that like insanely hard to believe that he's not going to be on a pitch count in this spot?
I don't believe it.
Yeah, like
there's a lot of stuff I don't believe coming from DC. That's pretty high up on the list.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like I think I would give him 90 pitches, like tops, very tops. The spot is good, right? Like against Baltimore, they strike out a bunch. They have like some power, not power that's going to crush you every single time. But I don't know, 8,300, and we have him projected to be 26%. That's really high. Plus, like, do you know what you're getting from Strasburg at this point? Because I don't.
No.
He started off the season really, really poorly, then went on that injured list right away. So maybe that was the problem, that he was hurt. But are we sure he's 100%? No. Like, you can never be sure with Strasburg that he's 100%. So for me, like, I'll have some, but I'm going way under here.
Yeah, and it makes sense. And I imagine, just to wrap up with him, the high ownership is clearly coming off returning, and of all things, it's against Baltimore, like you said, a high strikeout count. But even still, 8,300 in that ownership percentage just seemed a little off. That's why I brought him up specifically, beyond the obvious, which you mentioned, which is him coming back and being healthy.
Yeah, I just I cannot believe that he's not on a pitch count. He threw 75 in his most recent rehab start. I mean, whatever, like maybe they'll let him go 90, but it's still like Washington is not a pitcher's park, and it's like 75 degrees. I don't know. He gave up a ton of power before he sat. Santander is back, which is my favorite hitter on the Orioles. Pardon me, Trey Mancini, like you're awesome. But I just love Santander for his power. And he's 2.9K, by the way. Like if you want to get somebody against a high-owned pitcher, that's your guy right there. I know we'll get to hitters later on, but just a preview. But yeah.
Nothing wrong with that, by the way. You tease away, like sprinkle throughout. It's great.
Yeah. So for me, Strasburg, not where I'm at today.
All right. Now we start to look at the percentage-wise, especially when you measure up everything for DraftKings. We can start to whittle it down on the one-pitcher lineups for FanDuel, but just, looking as we get to that middle to kind of that bottom end where it becomes really boom bust for guys in Hauser, Martinez, towards the end of that. Are you looking at anybody in a second pitcher mode to maybe save some money, and knowing that you can take advantage, if it is a Hauser, a Hendricks, where you can take advantage of a cheaper option, knowing, of course, that it's a pretty big risk in its own right, but maybe the big field helps mitigate that a little bit?
Yeah. So like the best pitching weather of the day is on the West Coast. So LA, like the Angels, only 62 degrees, right?
Yeah.
And we have Jose Quintana at 6,200, who has a 13.6 swinging strike rate and 34% strikeout rate. This is higher than Bauer, by the way, on both ends. His ERA is ugly, 6.64, but we don't look at ERA. We want to look at advanced stats here. His xFIP is 3.3. That's excellent. That's awesome. And you're paying 6,200 for this guy. The Athletics lineup does have some power in it. But in 62-degree weather in LA, Give me Quintana all day here.
Any long shot play here? I mean, you had Tyler Ivey called up, so maybe that works to his advantage here because Texas hasn't seen him.
What is this, like Phil Ivey's younger brother?
I'd rather have Phil Ivey, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. He's going to be 8% owned, but he's 4,800. I don't know, like, let me make a case for a really long shot play that I don't suggest you make on a ton of lineups. Like Quintana was bad enough. Herman Marquez at Coors is even worse. It's like 5,700 here, but this is a guy with a 374 xFIP, 15% swinging strike rate. That's really excellent. His BABIP this year, 424. The guy is getting insanely unlucky so far. Sure, Coors contributes to that, and you have really good hitting weather at Coors today. But like the Arizona lineup just sucks. There's not a lot of good hitters here. Like they're batting Josh Reddick in the 6th spot. This guy's like almost 40 years old Red Sox, old Astro, just coming off the DL. I don't know. I would take a shot on Marquez, and I would take a shot on Quintana before anybody else.
So before we start switching it to some stacks and looking at obvious to value, just whittling it down on the FanDuel lineups where you have one guy to choose from. And I know we initially were looking at Glass now as kind of the guy that you started to favor first, going from top to bottom from price on DraftKings. So are there two guys that you have the most exposure to in the one pitcher lineups tonight?
Yeah, on FanDuel, it's tough just because the pricing is so different. Like, I would definitely fade Strasburg there. Just saying that right off the bat. 10.2, way too high. But, like, Aaron Nola is only 9K there. I don't know. I guess you could take a shot. His stats are good.
I wouldn't trust him tonight, just personally as a Phillies fan.
Mike Minor play has the best matchup of the night, and he's 7,600. Yeah. So that's a really good spot. And then my high-priced guy would still be Glass now at 11. So I guess those are my two guys, Minor and Glass.
All right, so let's look at it. The obvious, of course, is there's a game in Coors Field. So when we look at stacks, Max, there's a game in Coors Field, and there's a high total already at 11, and we can pretty much expect, hey, Arizona's in town, two bad teams, each have lost 5 straight. So chances are that no matter who starts, you're going to get to the bullpen early, most likely for both teams. Colorado is right there at the top for Alex's stack tool as well. I imagine that you're pretty much favoring them and have a lot of exposure with them as well.
Yeah, I mean, Seth Frankoff could tell us all to frank off, I guess, and pitch a gem here. But I don't think that's going to happen too many times. A 6.4 total for Colorado, that's maybe the highest of the year. He has a 5.11 xFIP. Only 10% swinging strikes. He's a ground ball guy, like a finesse ground ball guy. 60% ground balls, but like at Coors, if you lift the ball even a little bit in this weather, it's going to go really, really far. He still gives up like 30% hard hits. That's like middle of the road, but only 21 batters faced today. Like we can't really take a ton of value on his stats here. I'm just assuming he's not a very, very good pitcher, and it's Coors. And even though the Colorado lineup is not great by any stretch, like Crone is back, McMahon is having one of the best years of anybody. So like he's actually my favorite hit on the Rockies out of everybody. McMahon is really good. Give me the Rockies as my number one stack today.
Arizona number 2, and I only ask because it's the same game, and you at least have a little more DNA and a resume on who's going on the mound for Colorado, as fresh as it may be for Arizona. And clearly the ownership stake's going to agree right up to the stack percentage of them being the top stack. But I don't know if it's just default, right? Because, hey, they happen to just be the other team playing tonight in Coors.
See, for me, it's no. And then just because the time of the year that it is, because it's so hot on the East Coast, because we have so many good other hitting games, I'm not going to take Arizona versus what I perceive to be a very good pitcher, even in a really good environment. Just because they're still chalky. They're the second chalkiest team we have. So there, I'm actually going to fade the chalk and go under on Arizona. Just because of the quality pitcher and the amount of spots that we have to target.
Yeah, and that's where we start to look at here, especially because if it's however many people you're justifying inside the stack, you have a little more wiggle room with the wider slate. So Colorado is clearly the obvious one, but also at the top. And again, now we're getting to the point where there really isn't going to be much difference from where our stack percentages are and our predictive models are, right, to ownership from Tampa, Milwaukee, Houston, kind of all the way down to kind of Washington. So is there a team in that top tier mentioned here, Max, that you can justify and play, even though it's not Colorado and you're pretty much at that point fading the Rockies or pivoting, I should say, for a better option?
Yeah, so for me, I'm going to be way over in Tampa. They're our third projected top stack at 6%, and they're actually only projected to be 5.6% owned. They're playing in that Little League Park in Tampa versus the Blue Jays, and Anthony Kay has some of the worst numbers I've ever seen of anybody out of any pitcher. He's got a 474 xFIP, but that's backed up by a 50% hard hit rate. That's insane. So hard hit balls in Tampa go really far. And not to mention, he's not a ground ball guy. He's a 37% fly ball guy. And the rest are like line drives and only 20% are ground balls. So they're going to put the ball in the air. And Tampa is the type of team that they've really coached their hitters to try and hit the ball in the air with the right launch angles in order to get the ball out of the park. So I love to target the Rays against the pitchers like Anthony Kay that are not going to strike them out. They also strike out the most in the league, by the way, at 30%. But this is not a guy that's going to strike them out, so you don't have to worry about that. And you're getting a ton of power upside in a Little League Park against this type of pitcher. I think this is my favorite stack of the day, even beyond anybody at Coors.
Yeah, I mean, even the ownership, right? It
seems
the
ownership's great.
Yeah, especially on this slate, right? It's almost like you're sneaking in. You see it at 5.5 right now. It's pretty damn good, Max.
Yeah, and like these guys are like cheap, you know?
Yeah.
Like Randy Arozarena is expensive, but he's one guy in that stack. Like Margot's 3.4K, sign me up. Even like Yandy Diaz, I usually never play just because he doesn't have a ton of pop. But here it doesn't matter. 3.4K in the 3 spot, please. Mike Brasso at 3.2K. He's one of those guys that has perfect launch angles. So yeah, him. I would even play Austin Meadows. Like he's not that bad versus lefties that don't strike him out. And he's one of those guys with awesome launch angles. So like those 5 guys I just mentioned, that's the stack right there.
I just wanted to look at a couple of other ones and maybe just especially from the value standpoint of not at the bottom by any means of this 15-game slate that we have tonight, but more so from just looking at maybe just below where we were talking about kind of hitting that middle tier. So we have on our, especially here for the lineup predictor, and over 5 runs from Milwaukee in Cincinnati. And I wonder if, you start to look at that Brewers stack as somewhere in that middle. Same thing with Minnesota as well, where you can kind of, and Milwaukee, to be fair, isn't that much in the middle. They're right below Tampa. So they are high up there. But Milwaukee and Minnesota, and again, I'm not talking about so much mining the value, Max, as far as what's listed at the bottom, but maybe looking at the obvious of Colorado, people, as you were fading Arizona, and then Tampa, then starting to look elsewhere and overlooking maybe a Milwaukee or Minnesota.
Yeah, I like Milwaukee. Jeff Hoffman is one of those guys that I like to target with stacks just because a ton of fly balls, a ton of hard hit balls. And I mean, this is like another really, really good hitter's park. The Great American Small Park, we used to call it. So it's 84 degrees there, great hitting weather. I mean, Yelich is back, which helps this lineup a ton. Avi Garcia is actually one of my favorite hitters, and he's not playing today. But like Shaw through Kane, I guess, is the stack that I would go with. I would not play Colton Wong just because he doesn't have a ton of upside. Jackie Bradley's actually been hitting the ball really hard this year. So you can also target him in the 7th spot at only 2.9K. But yeah, I love the Brewers. Very good stack right there. I'm not as enthused with Minnesota just because a ton of their hitters have gotten hurt. So like Buxton's hurt, Cruz is hurt. Like these are the guys that you want to target in the stack. Like Max Kepler's hitting 3rd. I like him, but I don't love him. A lot of ground balls from him. Kirilloff is back. That's a really good thing for that stack. but I just don't know if I can find 5 guys here that I want to play in a row.
We talked about Nola, fading Nola on DraftKings, maybe at 9,000 on FanDuel, taking a shot at it, although I'm on record saying don't do it, but you're the expert, so I'll always defer to you, especially when it comes to this squad here. But I'm curious, from the flip side, just looking at pricing individually, is it a little too much, maybe of a risk to stack Boston because you'd be paying a lot for these guys?
Yeah, so like 15-game slate, we've talked about it all day. I don't think you need to.
Yeah.
Like, I think you can find, I don't know how many stacks you want to make. There's 30 stacks you can make. So I think you can find others. I think they're in the bottom of the order here. Just because 3.9 run total, Nola's a great pitcher. Like, he doesn't give up a ton. Even when he's bad, he doesn't give up a ton. So yeah, I think it's just a stay away from Nola and from the Red Sox for me.
You know, I don't think we've mentioned one element at all. Maybe there was one that you snuck in there about your squad tonight. Are you just fading everybody entirely?
Rodon is really good. Like, scarily good. I would normally, I think, targeting
he's high priced.
Yeah, targeting lefties with the Yankees is a winning strategy just because they have lefties way better than righties. But this guy has a 2.26 xFIP. That's the lowest on the slate. 16% swinging strike rate, 35% strikeout rate, 43% ground balls, and only 19% hard contact. It's just not a spot. Like, can the Yankees go off? Sure, they can. But I think I would rather play Rodon as like, I don't know, what is he going to be out? Like 2%, 3% against these Yankees than play the Yankees.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Now, before we start looking individually, and again, we have this fantastic promo. Today is the day. We have an NBA deep dive coming your way at the top of this hour. So you want to make sure you take advantage of everything. The other New York team, and just kind of looking at that matchup again, it would be kind of lower of a risk here, or higher of a risk, and lower on the return being a little safe there. Anything with that lineup specifically?
Yeah, 3.6 total for the Mets, just way too low. And like,
yeah, big risk, lineup, right?
Look how crappy this lineup is.
I think you could say that. I've heard Lofty say like a bunch of crap on here.
Sweet. Yeah, this lineup is shit-y. 3 points. I mean, Nido is hitting 5th. Thomas Nido is hitting 5th. I don't know. There's one good hitter in this lineup, and that's Francisco Lindor, and he's been cold all year. I guess Dom Smith is fine. Yeah, I mean, Brandon Drury in the 7th spot, Jose Peraza in the 6th spot. If John Curtis was like a competent pitcher, I would play him all day, but unfortunately he's not. So yeah, no Mets for me.
Selfishly, I just brought them up because I figured you'd tear into them, and then we would both get.
But I mean, how bad is this lineup? This might be the worst lineup in the majors right now.
It's terrible right now, and I love it because I'll take any advantage I could get with this Phillies team somehow still with their head above water. So I'm just sitting here laughing away at it. You already with the big brother looking down at them like they're the little brother still. So I just figured we would have a laugh at least at the Mets.
The Mets just mess up so many things. Like, I'm a Jets fan. And I think the Jets have made better decisions than the Mets overall in like the last 10 years. And that's saying a lot.
That is saying a lot. Now, I don't know if it's a definitive, like, 3-length.
It's not a landslide. It's not a landslide.
Exactly.
But I think it's clearly better.
You're right. I'll give you that. No, without a doubt, I'll give you that it's better. It may just be like by a little, like the margin is there, but it's still noticeable. I'll give you that it's noticeable. As mentioned, we have another NBA deep dive tonight. We have one more play-in game before the playoffs start. So you really want to take advantage of what we have going on for you today with the NBA Weekly Pass, giving you full access to everything from the NBA Showdown and single game, including player projections. You've got ownership projections. The NBA Express Pass is only $4.95, but here's the deal that expires today. So you can get in right now and be prepared for the deeper dive tonight. If you haven't already, just go to awesemo.com/promos and you'll receive 2 weeks of the NBA Express for the price of one. Again, only $4.95, and this gives you everything: access to the lineup builder, the ownership rankings, big board player value. Here's the thing: like, this is the precursor, right? Just use our promo code PLAN. Max, this is the precursor. Like, this is what people get in on. And then what we do a day or two or week or so later is we start to see these people pop up on like the Awesemo Hall of Fame.
Every time.
It's amazing, right? The correlation that's there is just amazing.
The run good that comes from signing up at Awesemo is unparalleled anywhere else in the industry.
I've never seen it. Yeah, I've never seen anything like this. And there's a reason, like, the community grows every day. We just remind people to like and subscribe. You don't want to miss shows, especially live before locks. Like, we lead you up to the top of the hour as Slate's Lock, and also to subscribe to the podcast. So the deeper dives, things that are strategy shows earlier in the day, that you can listen in case you do miss them live, and you can come back for it. But it's just crazy how there's so many different things. Like, even what we have and what you're using tonight, what we have with Tyler behind us and popping up on the screen, and knowing that you need like 4 monitors open because you have to go so deep on pitchers and stacks. So let's look at individual and go around. And I just wonder, what is your overall theory on the catcher position when you have such a wide slate, a large slate like tonight?
Yeah, I just want people with power. Like, I want people that can give me 14 points with one swing. Like, that's all I'm looking for. And that just means, like, I'm targeting the boom and bust guys. Like, even if they're cheap, I like Sal Perez is like 5K today, right? I'm going to have like 0, just because obviously he's the best catcher on the slate. But I'm not going to pay up at this position on a 15-game slate. There's so many guys that I can find that will give me similar projections, but at lower salaries.
And you mentioned one. Is there any other that would jump out, maybe even below
like my
that?
favorite guy is probably, actually, like, I don't want to recommend anybody that's not in the lineup. So let me just check. Because I've done that before and it's not great. Eytan.
Oh, no, that's fine. I'm sure I've made much worse mistakes on here than that. So comparatively speaking, we're good.
Yeah, so Narvaez hitting 4th in the Brewers lineup is definitely my favorite guy.
3,700, I have him, right?
He's having a 3,700, having a really good year against a crap pitcher in a great park. Like, this is probably the best play here. I'm sure he's going to be owned. Like, don't expect him to be unowned. Narvaez has definitely been one of the chalkier catchers this year, but that's one guy that I'm looking at. All right, so with the rest of the guys, I just want to say, as far as catchers go, it's a position that you want to be part of your stack. Like, make a catcher your 5th guy in your stack, even if you think he's not very good. Just because if your stack goes off, your catcher is going to get a billion at bats, and he has a way better chance of giving you the points that you need than a one-off guy. So I love playing catchers as part of my stacks.
I just want to go back because we have a couple of questions popping up on the chat. Reminder, the super chats, anything you have specifically for Max. We did talk a little bit and mention the White Sox. So as Christopher comes in, we get closer to the top. Yeah. It didn't seem like you were jumping on Chicago by any means as far as a stack, right?
I think, like, Montgomery is one of my favorite guys on the Yankees. So, like, take this with a grain of salt. But I love the guy that throws, he has 9 different pitches. Seriously. Because he throws different arm angles, different speeds on his pitches. He has he just has a lot of stuff to keep you off balance. Yeah, this is a great lineup at the White Sox. It's hot in New York today, 75 degrees at the time that they're going to play, and you have the short porch. But I never really stack against Montgomery just because his blowups are not that bad. So I love one-offs on the White Sox. Don't get me wrong. You can target them for power here, for sure. Because Montgomery will give up some home runs, but it's not the type of guy I like to target for stacks.
Thomas, I see on the stream, Smith in Atlanta hitting lefties well. You're going to get a great deal on him at 2,400 on DraftKings. We have him projected just over 6 fantasy points, kind of in the meat of it. Is there any interest, any exposure you have with him tonight?
So, my spiel on Tyler Anderson, and the reason I'm not on the Brave stack today is I think he's better than most people do. He's a guy that pitched in Coors forever and kind of got beat up there, but his underlying stats are not that bad. So I never like to target stacks against him, but this guy's 2.4K. I mean, sure, he can get you a couple hits. But Kevin Smith isn't like a power guy. So I wouldn't expect him to double down for you or anything.
Fair enough. Now, speaking of that, though, and expecting power and then some, we can look at first baseman and if it's paying a little extra or trying to mine some value. I mean, I'm seeing as far as 5,100 for Abreu. Reese here in Philly tonight, a little less at 4,500. Who right there at the top? You mentioned fading Atlanta, so I imagine you don't have much exposure with Freddie Freeman, even in one-offs, Max.
Nah, not like lefty. He just doesn't hit lefties as well as he does righties. There's no reason to pay 5,500 for him. I mean, CJ Cron is going to be the chalk, but he's my favorite guy here. I wrote him up to lead the league in home runs. That's not happening, but he got hurt. But he still has a ton of power. Only 3,800. He's our highest projected first baseman. You're not going to be different here. Like, I'm telling you that right away. But he's my favorite first baseman here for sure. And then I like Chris Bryant in this spot. We didn't mention the Cubbies, but they're one of my under the radar stacks just because Carlos Martinez is so bad at this point in his career. Only a 7% swinging strike rate and an 11% strikeout rate. Like, these are not things that are going to keep you in the majors for too long. 5.44 xFIP, and the Cubbies are going under the radar here. The Cardinals Stadium doesn't project to be one of the best hitting parks, but when it gets hot, it plays really small. So, and Chris Bryant's been hitting really well this year. All fly balls, all line drives. So that's what you want to see out of your power first baseman. So at 5K hitting second, I really like Chris Bryant.
Are you overpaying maybe in your mind, or is there any value in return in spending some money? And I mentioned Reese as far as where we have him here on the projection for position, even Abreu as far as 5,100 there, and then maybe even a little lower, but understanding that it's still going to be, as far as a projected return, higher, paying 5,300 for Trey Mancini.
Yeah, Mancini's been so good this year, coming off of that cancer thing. It's so great to see him doing so well. I mean, I love Mancini, but I was saying with Strasburg, I love targeting one-offs against them. I'm not going to stack Baltimore too much, but I always want to have some one-offs with especially my popular stacks against popular pitchers, because that makes you different in GPPs. And it's also really fun to see a really chalky pitcher buried while you're gaining points. I like Mancini. 5.3K is expensive, but he's very good. So you're paying for a guy that's a good hitter. And I think, did you mention Rhys Hoskins here at 4.5K? Yeah, I mean, he's definitely the second best hitter on the Phillies, right? After Harper, he has the most power, gives you the most fly balls, most line drives, most projected home runs. The problem is with Perez is he's a ground ball guy. Only 27% hard hits and 46% ground balls. So you have to mitigate that upside a little bit. But I do like his price at 4.5K. That's lower than we normally see it.
Well, I'll stay in that game and just to open up the conversation, because again, for pricing and looking at second baseman and having to deal with a ground ball pitcher, I wonder if you look at any value in, especially in a one-off scenario, because I don't think that you were pretty high on stacking the Phillies, which I don't blame you, but looking at a one-off scenario with a guy like Segura hitting higher in the lineup, McCutchen for the most part hitting well in front of him. You mentioned Bryce Harper. Is there anything that you could make of that at 2,900 I see on FanDuel?
2,900 is super cheap on FanDuel, but on DK is 4.9K. I just never play Segura just because he doesn't have too much pop. When he hits a home run, it's 378 feet or something.
That's probably got more power right now.
Yeah,
you're right.
That's his top max distance that he can probably get on the ball at this point in his career. And against the ground ball guy, he can get you some doubles and infield hits. He still runs, which is nice. He can still steal bases. But just at 4.9K and DK, I think you can get better upside with a Ryan McMahon at 4.9K in that Coors game, or even going down and playing a guy I don't know. Let me see.
Well, what about Wong? We have him right above him as far as
that's another guy that never hits home runs. For me, I just target power so much in my stacks because that's what wins GPPs, and that's all I play. Like, I can understand in cash games going to like a Wong because he's going to be really highly owned today, and you just want to like block somebody with Wong, no problem with that. But if I'm gonna play stacks, I'm gonna play to win. Like I'm going Ricky Bobby to the first or last for me. So yeah, like I never play guys like Wong or guys like Segura, and I try to target the upside with home run hitters like, you know, Brandon Lowe, like guys like that, like Ryan McMahon, guys that swing for the fences.
So let's look at that. And just on that same vein of the stack to now individually, you mentioned Lowe right away because you were super high on the Tampa stack. So as far as anybody else that jumps out at this position specifically, Max, where are you finding that power that you're comfortable playing in now?
Yeah, so my highest owned guy is Mike Brosseau, actually. He's a second base, third base eligible, only 3.2K in that Tampa game. He does get pinch hit for a lot. He's kind of like your lefty hitting specialist, but he has a ton of power, young kid, and he's playing in that little tiny stadium facing the guy that I probably think is the biggest blow-up pitcher on the slate with Anthony Kay. So, like, I'm just going to pay 3.2K at, like, a position that doesn't have a ton of power. And I also like Brandon Lowe as your contrarian play in a lefty-lefty matchup. You know, if they get to Anthony Kay, like, I don't think he's long for this game. They get into the bullpen, he can definitely go nuts against the righty in the bullpen for you.
So we're going to give, before we get out of here, of course, go through some more positions and give some home run picks. And speaking of player props and picks specifically like that, where you can go out to the books and bet on, we have the alternative, and that's who is sponsoring our show tonight, No House Advantage, NHA, from basketball, baseball, the NFL, PGA, is, I know you have a big eye on that. Max, all for cash prizes. Everything peer-to-peer fantasy sports has been leveled now. You don't have to worry about the books, the value moving up, losing value later in the day. This is the end around, and it's beautiful. And if it's not live where you live, trust me, as I'm waiting for this here in PA, as the very second that it is, you'll be all over No House Advantage, Max as well. NHA, here's the beauty of it. You can use our promo code. We have a promo code where you can jump on and get $20 off your first deposit. You'll see how easy it is to play, to win, especially taking advantage of all of beyond 500 player props across any sport that you can play DFS tournaments in. So download it right now today and use our promo code Awesemo and get a $20 first match deposit. And I know we've got some home run picks and all before we get out of here. I'm going to fade Nola as much as I'm cycling through a bunch of Red Sox tonight before I pick out who specifically we have. So now we know the mentality, right? We know how Max Smotritskiy approaches these wide, gigantic slates, right? And I assume it's the same way across the board. If it's a 4-game slate or 15-game slate, you're looking for power. You're looking for guys with pop in their bats. So we look now at third baseman, and instead of me trying to direct it, where is the guy that meets the Max mantra best?
I mean, Ryan McMahon, again, he's second base, third base eligible in that Coors game facing Frankoff. Like, I don't know.
Why is he only 4,900, Max?
Because the DK pricing algorithm is strange. You know, sometimes they price guys up to 6K out of nowhere in like a weird game, and sometimes they give you 4,900 Ryan McMahon. And usually, like, I would avoid chalk hitters, right? Because our hitter projections are never going to be as good as our pitching projections. But I'm just telling you, like, on a 15-game slate, he's never going to come in at 30% owned. That's just not going to happen. And if he's 15%, like, fine, I'm going to go over. And I'll eat the chalk. If he, like, has a bad game, he has a bad game. But he's the best projection, second best projection to Jose Ramirez in our tool here. And I agree with that. I also don't hate Jose Ramirez, by the way. 5.6K, you're going to pay for him. But this is a guy that steals bases and has power, which is what we like to see. Randy Dobnak has not been pitching in the majors all year. I mean, I don't know how long he's going to pitch here, but he's not very good. His mustache is great, but that's about all I can say for him. Yeah, I mean, 5.6K for him. I think the position at third base here is not a position you're going to want to pay down at. There's just too much pop, too much power. I mean, even Rafael Devers against Nola, like you were saying, you can play a guy like that at 5.2K. This is a guy that hits everybody. And, you know, Nola struggles with left-handers more than right-handers. So this is a guy that's in a good spot. Bregman also paying for him, also a guy in a good spot. So, I mean, pretty much everybody's priced up here. Like you guys were asking for White Sox. I don't mind Moncada here. Switch hitter, only 4,500. I think that's a little cheap for Moncada. So I really like him in this spot as well. I think if you're paying down, it's probably Austin Riley, power hitter in the Braves lineup. I don't love the Braves as a stack, but I wouldn't hesitate to play him as a one-off here and just look for a home run.
Before we hit the outfield, one more, and you can look at shortstops, guys who are projected right there at the top. Tatis, of course, at 10-7, but not even the highest price, at least on DraftKings. Trey Turner is going to come in at 6K. So I wonder, do you apply that same mentality at this position, Max, that we just did at third, where maybe this isn't the best opportunity or place, if you will, to pay down?
Yeah, that's another spot. Like Trevor Story at 5,200 is our highest projected guy, just in the vein with all these Coors guys. Like you shouldn't really be making Coors stacks or Colorado stacks, I should say, without him. Just because too much power. He also steals bases. Timmy Anderson is really good against lefties. That's another guy I would target as a one-off in that White Sox. Fernando Tatis, I mean, always, right? Like Trey Turner steals bases, has power, 6K. Like, I don't see anybody to pay down for here. Like all these guys that are cheap, like Jose Iglesias, just don't have the pop that is going to win you GPPs. So you're kind of like praying for them to, get 3 hits, which is a way less of an occurrence than like getting 1 home run. So like, I guess Chad Pinder here at 2.6K is interesting. Is he in the lineup? Did they announce the lineup yet? Yeah, like he's hitting 5th. Yeah. I know I said I like Quintana, but he's going to give up some power. This is a guy that strikes out a bunch, but also gives up home runs. And Pinder's only 2.6K hitting 5th in this Oakland lineup. So he would be my pay down option.
We have a bunch of guys to look at, especially with a 15-game slate. Reminder is you have NBA Deeper Dive coming your way in just about 8-9 minutes from now on Awesemo.com. You want to take advantage. Today is the last day to take advantage of this amazing promo that we're running here for you. And again, we talked about just the precursor of this, of taking advantage of the NBA Express Pass, which is normally $4.95, but using the promo code PLAYIN and then being a part of the Awesemo Hall of Fame. I mean, you can't have one without the other, right? You want to have access to all the tools. You want to take advantage of everything. And then we want to see your name and your handle with the Awesemo profile right next to @Mlb Dfs, bragging that he just won another $250K on a tournament because he had all these mashers in his lineup, right?
That's right. I mean, DFS has gotten harder and harder, right? Like, I think we all know that. So you need the tools that we have available. Like, you can't just go in blind anymore like you used to. Just a massive edge if you sign up for all these tools.
And then you get to brag, and that's what the Awesemo Hall of Fame is all about, right? So
I mean, that's what fantasy sports is all about. I mean, like when we were playing fantasy football 20 years ago in these roto leagues, and we were posting on Yahoo message boards, like it's all about the bragging.
Exactly right. That's why you had all those crazy bets at the local bar or wherever, because you didn't have Twitter. You didn't have social media to post pics of people. You had to physically go out and embarrass the person who finished last.
It was so much fun.
Yes. All right. So here's what you need to do. Just download we need you to have the profile pic first and foremost, right? So download the Awesemo profile pic at awesemo.com/avatar. All you need to do is place in a top 3 contest, over 5,000 contestants. That should be easy, especially taking advantage of all the free premium tools today, including top pitchers for MLB. So the Awesemo Plus is available to you for free, as you can see how valuable it is. And then you just tweet your wins at Awesemo HOF, and you can see cycling through the news god up there, bragging, of course, all chesty with that victory. And you can win a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. It's simple, it's easy. And as Max is telling you, this is the guy who we're paying to come on and tell you how to make money, explaining how difficult this thing is. It's not me who's newer to it as far as the MLB. It's the depths that you have to travel in order to win some money. So that's what we do for you. There's Chris up there as well, and more winners. Tweet your wins at Awesemo HNF, and tag all of us. You want to tag Lofty and DFS Max and me. Just make sure you're following us too, right?
I will retweet you 50 times.
There you go. Absolutely. There you go, my friend. All right, let's look at all outfielders. We've got a couple of home run picks before we get out of here, brother. So let's start in the outfield, and let's start with that bat, of course, and that's what we're looking for. Guys who can clear the fence with one swing and make it easy for you to win some money tonight. And we've been fading a lot of my guys. Is there any love for Harper?
I mean, Harper in a lefty-lefty spot versus a ground ball guy. I don't know.
He's not terrible against lefties overall.
He's really good against lefties, but it's just not as much power versus lefties.
Yeah.
He still draws the walks. He still gets on base. So, I mean, he wouldn't be my home run pick here. But if I was for some reason stacking the Phillies, I wouldn't leave him out, by any means.
But you're not stacking the Phillies, so I'm sorry. Like, I'm really not trying to subconsciously get you to at the end of the show, stack the Phillies. I promise you.
Right,
I absolutely promise. 4,800. 4,800.
My dog agrees.
Yes. Sounds like a good dog, too. What kind of breed?
Right. He's a Shih Tzu Maltese, very barky.
Nice. I have a Weimaraner, so a little difference in size between the two.
Yeah, exactly.
I've got a masher.
Your dog would eat my dog for sure. Your dog is a home run hitter, while my dog is a singles hitter.
You got a Gene Segura. There's nothing wrong with that. You use him in the lineup. You can actually, you can win some games that way. There's nothing wrong at all. All right, so let's look at some other guys. Yelich. You look at the price. Maybe that jumps out at you. Where is some value for a masher tonight, where you don't have to overpay in this slate?
Yeah, Yelich is only 4,800. I think he's going to be super chalky, and he hasn't hit a ton of power so far this year. So I don't know. Like, if you're making a Brewer stack, you would have to play it. But as a one-off, I think I could go elsewhere. I actually like Soto in this spot. Facing like Jorge Lopez, gives up a ton of power, a ton of fly balls. We don't really talk about a Nat stack, which, I mean, I don't love a Nat stack just because there's not a ton of power in this lineup. But 1 through 4, I do like. I guess excluding Bell. Like, I wouldn't play Bell. Bell doesn't hit home runs anymore. So Turner, Soto, Schwarber, I think make a lot of sense. And the two outfielders here, Soto and Schwarber, are really in good spots.
Anybody that you're paying down for in this scenario, because unlike other positions, right, you can use the other slots here to maybe justify a 4,200 or a high 3,000 player.
Yeah, like Lorenzo Cain's actually been on my radar all year. He's been hitting a lot more fly balls, a lot more line drives. Usually we see him as a ground ball guy. A lot of hard hits, only 3,300. And it's in that Brewer stack that we already said that we like. He also will run and steal some bases. And then you have a bunch of outfielders, cheap outfielders on that Arizona team. I already said that I don't love an Arizona stack, but I think they make fine one-offs. And if you're going to stack Arizona, like, include all these cheap outfielders so you can get pay up for the good pitching today.
Peralta's at 4,100.
Yeah, like they're all cheap.
Over 9.
Like Pavin Smith is my favorite guy, actually. Only 3,800 first base and outfield eligible. And he's their best, expected line drive, expected home run hitter.
We talked about stacks earlier for those who are just jumping in. And again, where you been, like, subscribe, notification bell, get it all up there so you're not missing anything we're doing, especially as we're getting ready for a 15-game slate before lineups lock in. But Max was heavy on Tampa. So looking at individuals as far as one-offs tonight where maybe you're not stacking in other lineups, do you have anybody with some exposure for Tampa in the outfield?
I love Randy Arozarena. This guy is going to be, I mean, he's already a star, right? Like, the playoffs last year made him a star. But he's actually been hitting much better recently. And he's in that small park, targeting a lefty who he feels more comfortable against. He still strikes out a bunch. All Tampa does. But K's not going to strike out too many guys. So I actually really love Randy Arozarena as a one-off, part of your stack, whatever. You're going to pay for him $5K, but this is a great spot for him.
All right. Who's your home run pick tonight, brother? You started because you're going to get
too much. I mean,
you can pick whatever. No, look. There are no. You can say shit. You can say whatever you want. You sure as hell can double down on somebody you're playing in a lineup and your home run pick. Absolutely, Max.
I mean, I will give you him, and I'll give you a bonus. How about that? That sounds pretty good. That sounds pretty good, right? So I'll give you him, and I'm going to give you Kyle Schwarber Only 4.4K on that Nats team that I said I like the lefties from. So those are my two guys right there.
Man, I'm telling you, I can get Bogarts right now, plus 450 and Fantasy Guru 76.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. Don't take any Red Sox at all tonight. And Nola is going to give one up, and it's going to fly into South Philadelphia.
Bogarts isn't like a home run hitter. Take JD Martinez if it's anybody.
Yeah, well, the value's not there. That's why.
Okay. I take Hunter Renfroe. All he does is hit home runs.
Fair enough. Fair enough. There's my home run pick, Hunter Renfroe. Thanks, Max.
If he hits a home run, I'm going to tweet it out for sure.
Well, I'm going to bet it. So if he hits a home run, then you and I are going to split it. How about that? Okay.
Works for me. I like
Fair enough.
money.
Now, Tyler's going to jump in and say, wait a second, I was part of the show too, so I deserve it. It's got to go three ways. Let me think on that. Let me rest on that.
He's
awesome
22.
stuff.
He's going to waste that money, man.
That's
he doesn't
true.
know what to do with money yet.
Yeah, he's going to waste it on sugar drinks and
Exactly.
candy. You and I at least will put it to something. Right. You've got kids. I've got one on the way. Like, yeah, well, come on. We need to do this here. Brother, appreciate it. It's flying by. Thank you, first and foremost. Make sure you're following Max on Twitter at DFS Max. Make sure you get likes, subscribe, share everything up for the community. Let everybody know you see somebody new. Remind them, yo, smash that like button. You've got a deep dive of the NBA coming up. One big game before we can finally hit the playoffs. But we have just prepared you for a 15-game slate, so no excuses. Great job, Tyler. Thank you, sir, producing. Good night, everybody. For Max, for Tyler, I'm Eytan. Good luck, everybody.
Later.